We are good on YouTube. Good morning. Drop D said, I've been manipulated for sure. Well, sorry you've been manipulated, but we're going to get into that here today. And we'll wait till we get started here. Let me see. Are we live on YouTube, on Facebook? Okay, Facebook is starting. Wait for me in. As you are coming in, you can tell me where you are in from. Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. As y'all checking in, you can shout yourselves out. Tell me your name and location where you are coming in from. Wait for it. Facebook is taking a few extra beats here. Instagram, good morning. We are here. TikTok, good morning. What's going on, Courtney? Good to see you here again. And the topic here today, we're going to talk about toxic femininity. Toxic femininity, not toxic masculinity. Toxic femininity. We're going to discuss, is this actually a real thing? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do we know when we come across it? And Facebook is, for some reason, giving me a little bit of a hiccup. So let's get Facebook started again. We started on Facebook. Still telling me live video is starting, but it hasn't actually started. What's going on Facebook? All right, waiting for Facebook. Still, Facebook is taking some time. All right, let me go back. Might have to start Facebook again. Good morning, Nikki over there on TikTok. And what the hell is this? All right, so let me go back to Facebook's giving me an issue now. When you're streaming on so many platforms at the same time, it's inevitable that something is not going the way that it's supposed to be going. So I'm going back over, getting Facebook started. We are good on LinkedIn. We are on. Good morning. We're live on Rumble and X. Good morning there. We're live on YouTube. Let's see, where are we at here? Now they're asking me for the information again, so I got to type this in again. Give me one moment, everybody, as I get this one over here on Facebook started. I got to put the information in all over again. And as I've said, it would be good if there was one app that could do them all at the same time. The problem is you lose the perks. For example, there's certain things I can see on TikTok that if I was to use an aggregated platform in order to do it, I wouldn't be able to see those things. So Facebook is still asking me for details that I've already shared here. What are they asking for? All right, Facebook is giving me another issue here. Let me start. I'm gonna have to bring this back to the beginning. What we're going to talk about here today, as I already told you all, we're going to talk about toxic femininity. What exactly is that? What exactly does it mean? Is it a real thing? Is this something that's actually happening? Because we got to answer that question too, because maybe it doesn't even exist. I'm just getting Facebook fired up here the way that it's supposed to be. Facebook, for some reason, and again, I'm putting in all the details and is not doing anything. Save changes. 1, 2, 3. All right, Facebook might be out of commission today for whatever reason. It is not doing what it's supposed to do. I'm gonna try this one more time, and then we're just gonna go without Facebook. So go live, and just give me one moment while I get Facebook fired up here. The topic again. I'm not gonna say it again. One more moment. Facebook. Here we go. Facebook. There we go. Facebook. Details. Saving details. It's still telling me to complete post details. All the post details are already in there, and it's not giving me any other choices here. All right. So Facebook is not happening today for whatever reason, but we will continue over on YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. So first thing I want you all to understand, this is the disclaimer I'm going to give you all up front, is that some of you are probably tuned into this thinking, or at least when you heard the topic, that you think when I say toxic femininity, that some of you may believe, or just by default think that this means I'm going to talk about women doing the wrong things and basically balancing out the argument of toxic masculinity. And in some ways, that is what I'm going to do. Some of this is going to be about that. But if you came here thinking that this topic of toxic femininity is really about women, it's actually not. It's kind of about women, but it's kind of not about women. And as I get into explaining this, you're going to understand it very well. So I don't need to give too much of a background to this. All of you have heard of toxic masculinity. I did a whole live stream and I did maybe a 3 or 4 part series on my masterclass, which many of you call a podcast. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. It is called Work on Your Game. Comes out every single day. I already talked about toxic masculinity and the nonsense around that argument. My general disagreement with the toxic masculinity argument is that a lot of it has been framed and authored by females. So how is it possible for a female to talk about what is a toxic way to be a man? That doesn't even make any sense. If there's going to be a conversation about how to be a man, it needs to be had by men and it needs to be authored by men, not by women. The problem with that, even when men come out with the whole concept of talking about toxic masculinity, is a lot of the points around toxic masculinity are basically they're straw man arguments. You basically take certain things that you do want in a man. For example, a man's ability to control his emotions and his energy as a result of those emotions is a good thing. But then they frame it as if a man being completely stoic and not touching his emotions at all, as if there are only 2 options. There are 2 opposite poles. That's the whole issue with the toxic masculinity argument is there's a lot of what I call false framing. People create these false frames and then they argue against the false frame. Then they ask you to tell them why their false frame is wrong. Well, it's not that the false frame is wrong, that you should never have come up with the frame in the first place. Not your argument about the frame, is the frame itself. And this is the manipulation that a lot of people have become experts at using when it comes to these conversations around any type of social issue. But that's the reason why I'm here, to break down their nonsense and help you all explain what is actually true and how we should actually look at these situations. So that's what we're going to do here today. So let me introduce myself. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 40 books with more on the way. I've done 4 TEDx talks. I created this brand called Work on Your Game and this company called Work on Your Game. What we do here is we work with professional entrepreneurs, and what we help them do is scale their businesses up from the 6-figure level to the 7-figure level. You can learn more about that by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. So let's get into this toxic femininity. First of all, first thing we need to understand, all you need to understand as we get into this conversation, is toxic femininity is not an exclusive domain of women. There are some toxic feminine men out here, and let's get right into that from the beginning. Seeing this energy in so many men, a toxic feminine energy in a man, is really what led to me having this conversation. So ladies, if you came in here thinking I was going to talk about women, I'm really not. I'm really talking about men who are I'm really talking about women in men's bodies is basically what we would call this. People who are actually men. If you look at them, you would say, is that a man or a woman? You would say that's a man. But then when you listen to that man speak, you look at the decisions that he makes. And if you could read his mind and you listen to his words, he is behaving, acting, and conducting himself as if he were a female, even though he's in a man's body. And that's the reason why I'm talking about this. And I'm going to tell you that I have 3 types of people that I have an aversion to. 3 types of human beings that I'm really not a fan of. And I do not work well with these 3 types of people. Number 1 is the moralizer. The moralizer is the person who sees someone else doing something that they consider to be wrong or bad, or that they personally would not do. And there's one thing if you would say, hey, I saw what this person did. I probably wouldn't do that. They did it. No, I probably wouldn't have done that. They'd ask me. I probably wouldn't have done what they did. That's fine to say that. I could say that to certain people, especially if they ask me. Moralizers are the type of people who see someone else doing something that they deem bad and looking in the mirror at themselves. Every human on the planet knows that we have all done things that we probably shouldn't have done. Things that we maybe regret, things that we wouldn't want the whole world to know about, things that we wouldn't want the authorities to know about, maybe things that we wouldn't want plastered on a billboard in the middle of the town in which we work or live. The moralizer is the type of person who looks at another person who does something that they consider bad, and then they start judging that person. Well, hey, I've done bad stuff too, but what you did is worse than anything I would do. Therefore, I am above you on a moral, I'm standing on this moral high ground above you. And this whole thing is called the moral high ground fallacy. I occupy a higher ground than you simply because the worst things that you've done are worse than the worst things that I've done. That's called moralizing. I'm not a big fan of moralizers. There's a lot of moralizers out there these days. especially when someone like a public figure gets accused of or caught doing something that is considered bad, like stepping outside of your marriage, or you got accused of a crime or anything that couldn't be called bad. And then you get a whole bunch of people moralizing about that person. Well, hey, I've done bad stuff, but not as bad as that person, so I'm above them because they've done bad things. That's the moralizing. Second type of person that I'm not a fan of is the feminine energy man. I'm really not a fan of feminine energy men. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about here today. When I say toxic femininity, is the feminine energy man. And I just told you what this is. This is a man with a woman's emotions and a woman's mindset and a woman's vocabulary, all in the package of a male. I'm not a fan of feminine energy men. I don't like passive aggression in men. I don't like men who use their mouths in terms of the way that they speak to people as if they're a woman, because the general idea, and I've seen this happen many times. I've told you the story of when my son was born. And we were in a hospital. He was born at home. We did a home birth, a planned home birth. And we ended up taking him to the hospital because we wanted to make sure he hadn't ingested some meconium into his lungs, which is basically baby poop. He's not supposed to poop till he gets out, but he pooped when he was still inside. And there was a female doctor who, she and I had a clash of ideas and ended up going the way that I wanted it to go. But when I told the story of this, I wrote a whole article on it. If you want the article, let me know. I'll send you a link to it. Send it a DM. My assistant will send it to you. And one of the things that happened while we're having our back and forth is this doctor, female doctor, she seemed relatively young. I mean, you got to spend a lot of years in medical school. So she was probably in her early, maybe mid 30s at the most, maybe 35 at the oldest, white woman. And it appeared to me that she grew up in an environment in which she was taught that no matter what a girl does or says, that a boy can never hit a girl. And generally, I'm of the belief, and I affirm that a man should not put his hands on a woman in 99% of cases. At the same time, here's the point that I'm making. And I said this when I wrote the article about this woman. I said, the way this woman was speaking to me was as if she comes from an environment where she thinks she could say anything that she wants out of her mouth and to a man, and nothing could ever possibly happen. And for the most part, I would agree that that's the way it should be. At the same time, I come from an environment where if a woman got a little bit too verbally out of line with a man, there are men out there who will put their hands on a woman for something that she says out of her mouth. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying that I would do it. I would tell most men who are listening to this right now, you probably should not do that. But do I accept and understand that there are men who do operate by that code? I absolutely do. I come from an environment where girls would fist fight the boys, and like real fist fight. I'm not talking about for fun. And there were girls who could beat boys in actual fist fights. That's the world that I come from. That's the world that I grew up in. I'm saying all that to say this. What I have found these days in the world that we're in now is that there are a lot of males who talk to other males as if they're a woman who has this same belief that I can say anything to another man and nothing's going to happen on a physical level. I 100% do not agree with that. And that's one of the things I'm talking about when I talk about feminized men. We're going to get into that as we get into the topic here today. I was telling you just the three types of people I'm not a fan of. So number one is the moralizer. Number two is the feminine energy man. And number three is the complainer. Complainers is a pretty easy one. I don't have to give too much description of that. People who just bitch, moan, and complain about their situation instead of doing something about the situation. Every one of us has times or circumstances right now that exist in our lives that we could bitch, moan, and complain about. Actually, all of us have things going on in our lives right now. If we really thought about it, we could come up with a whole bunch of complaints and a whole bunch of reasons to feel disappointed, angry, sad, whatever you want to call it, over, the situation, or to complain about the situation. And there's nothing wrong with having things that you don't like. I got things in my life that I don't like, but what you need to do is do something about it rather than complaining about it. Complaining is not really doing something. The only reason you should use complaining is to draw energy from the complaint to go actually take action. So these are three types of people that I'm not a fan of. All right, so now that y'all know that, let's move on. More on this first point that I want to share here is that it appears that many of these toxic feminine men, because that's really what we're talking about here today, men. And let me also say this. The reason why I'm pointing out toxic feminine energy men instead of talking about the women is because all of you should understand, just as a simple reality of humanity, is that humanity and society, the polite society that we have today, was built by and continues to be maintained by men. Society was built by men. It is maintained by men. And if societies fall, it's because the men fell. And if societies rise and grow, it is because the men rose and grew. So this is the reason why, and also because I'm a man myself, I am going to hold the man accountable, even if the woman is doing something wrong. Even if the woman is doing something wrong, I'm going to hold the man accountable. Now, why is that? Why would I use that frame? Well, we can go back to the book of Genesis. I'm no expert on the Bible, but I have read some of it. And in the book of Genesis, God put man in charge. And as soon as the man didn't do his job of being in charge and the woman got deceived, the first thing God did was address the man. All right, that's it right there in the book. You can go read the book of Genesis. It's right there. As soon as Eve allowed herself to be deceived by the serpent in the garden, according to the story, and God realized that she had been deceived, the first thing God did, he did not address the serpent. He did not address Satan. He did not address Eve. He did not address the woman. First thing he did was address the man. Even though the whole situation was the serpent deceiving the woman, he didn't address either one of them. First thing he did was address the man, which tells you what? That the man is the one who's supposed to be running the show. And as soon as the man wasn't doing his job, things got crazy. And it's the same thing that happens in society. When a society collapses, it's because the men are not doing their jobs. And if women find themselves feeling as if they need to do the job of building or running a society, it's simply because they're looking around and they see a whole bunch of men who are not doing their jobs. And the women say, I guess I got to do it because the men aren't doing what they're doing. This is the reason why feminism has risen again in today's society, because there's a whole lot of men not doing their job as men. And if men stepped up and did their job like the way they're supposed to, then feminism would not have any room to breathe. It would asphyxiate. There would be no room for feminism to even move up. So I find that many men, these men that I'm going to talk about here today, these toxic feminine energy men, many of them, it appears, did not have a masculine presence in their lives growing up. Many of you know that masculine presence as a father. Even if your father wasn't around, maybe you didn't have an uncle or a church leader or a sports coach or somebody in the neighborhood who was a man who could show that young boy how to become a man. And it is impossible for a woman to teach a boy how to be a man. That is not possible. So any of you single moms who are listening to this right now, I'm re-emphasizing this message for you. You cannot teach your son to be a man. It is impossible. You can teach him how to be a woman, which wouldn't be good, but you cannot teach him how to be a man. And some male figure needs to come along to support your raising of that boy, because he cannot become a man while looking at you as an example, no matter how masculine you may be as a woman. You just can't do it. It's just not in your nature. It's not in your wiring. So if it's not going to be the dad, it better be somebody. All that being said, all the men out there with kids, let me make sure this is on the record. You must be a father to your sons so that regardless of your relationship with the mom, and that's a whole other conversation we're not going to have here today, the sons that you have spawned, they need you so we have fewer and fewer of these feminized men in society, because feminized men in society become extremely dangerous. Because if you take the emotional leanings of a female and you put it in a man's body, that's a much more dangerous person than a female with female emotions in a female body. Is not nearly as dangerous as female emotions in a man's body. Why? Because a man has the physicality to inflict, to do violence and to inflict harm on people, places, and things in a way that a female simply does not. Men are generally bigger. Men are stronger. Men are more capable of violence. Men tend to lean more towards aggression and violence just by biology. So if you put feminine energy inside of a man, those are your most dangerous men. So when you get the mass offings of human life that happen in schools or happen in malls and things like that, it's usually by a man who doesn't know how to control his emotions. When you get violence in domestic relationships, it's often a man who does not know how to control his emotions. And also a woman who might have gotten verbally out of line and thought she was dealing with one type of man and found out it was a different type of man, which you got to hold the woman accountable for as well. But again, we're talking about the men here today. I'm holding the men accountable because, again, societies build and fall based on what the men do, not based on what the women do. And I'm going to take questions and comments at the end, by the way, any of you who may be commenting while I'm speaking. And you need to be a father to your daughters. Also, men, the reason why men need to be a father to their daughters, I just told you why it matters for the sons, because if we raise a whole bunch of feminized men into our society, a couple of things are going to happen. First of all, whatever society it is or community, that community is going to fall apart. Number one. Because women are not built to build and maintain a society. They're not built to do it. So if you put a bunch of women in charge of a society, that society is going to collapse. And it may even be taken over in a hostile way by another society of men who look and see there's a weakness over there. We can go take it. And you've never seen a society other than in the movies or on some TV show cartoon where women are running a society and that society is able to sustain and it is successful. That has never happened. It never will happen. And it's not because, well, that's because men just control things and never gave women the power, or some what do we call them? Feminists like to proclaim. That is nonsense, because the way that societies are run they're taken by force. Societies are taken by force. So if there was ever a group of women that was strong enough or capable of taking a society over, it would have happened. The reason it has never happened is because that is not a woman's role. The woman's role is to be in support, is be a support system for a man. That is the natural role of the woman. And again, that's biologically wired into all of us as human beings. And the man's role is to be in charge. And again, I'm not here to diss the women, at least not here today. I'm here challenging the men and holding the men accountable, because if a man does his job and stands up as a man in his masculine energy, not being a man, not being a woman in a man's body, then a woman will naturally fall into her role next to that man. Any man who is in his masculine energy in a proper way and doing his job as a man, any women around him will naturally fall into their positions as a support system for the man. That's just naturally how things happen. This occurs not only in intimate relationships like husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. It also happens in relationships. It can be brother, sister. It can be boss, employee. It can be two people who are on the same level at a job. Naturally, the woman will fall into a helpmate role to a man when a man is in his masculine energy. And when you get, and that's not to say that a woman can't be in a leadership role or in a leadership position. Personally, that's not something that I would see myself like professional wise. Maybe when I worked at jobs like where's some place I worked where there was a female as the boss. I worked at this restaurant called Friendly's outside of Philadelphia when I was in high school. Some of y'all know Friendly's. It still actually exists. They still got a few locations, mostly in the northeastern part of the country. My boss was a woman named Lisa. She was a female. She was in charge. But I was, again, all I was doing was making ice cream sundaes and stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in a professional position where you may be working in your career, like you're trying to build a career in this thing, and the woman's in charge. It would be a interesting situation for me to be in. I've never been in a situation like that. Maybe some of you are. Maybe some of you are women who are in that leadership role and in that leadership position. My point is not really about that, not about the corporate world. My point is that men were designed to be the leaders in whatever situation. Men were you want to join me, son? No. Okay. No? Okay. So my son came, looked in, he took a look at the situation and decided he didn't want to be here. He left. So men are built to be the leaders. And when men are not leading, we get chaos. All right, the law of entropy. All of you heard me describe this before. If you are new here, let me explain it very quickly. The law of entropy is a scientific thing. It's not a theory. It is a law that states that every entity and let's just say living thing or entity or organization that is designed and run by living things, that it is always moving towards a state of higher chaos and disorder. What exactly does that mean? For example, what does that mean, son? You know what it means? It means that if you didn't brush your teeth for a week, your teeth are going to be in pretty bad shape. All of you can just imagine that. I wouldn't suggest you try it as an experiment, but you can imagine what would happen if you didn't brush your teeth for a week. If you have a lawn outside of your house and you don't do anything to take care of the grass or to take care of the landscaping, your house is going to start to look crazy. And if you live in a community, the homeowners association might come knock on your door and say, hey, you got to do something about that grass. You know the rules. If you don't cut your grass, I'm going to fine you $300 until you cut the grass. So if you do not do something to maintain a situation and to keep it from getting out of control is the natural state of things. Any of you, you buy some produce from the grocery store, some cucumbers or some lettuce or some fruits, and you let them sit in your fridge for too long and you don't consume them, what happens to them? They spoil and they go rotten. You can't let a tomato sit in there but for so long. You got to use it pretty quickly because the natural state is for things to break down and to disintegrate. So the way that you stave off this kind of natural decline in anything in life is that you create standards and you create processes and you create rules that keep the disorder out. This is the reason why any of you who has a job, most of you have a job or a business, and your job or business, what do they do as soon as you get the job? What's the first thing they do to you? They train you. They send you to training, right? And or they just sit down with you and they go over the employee handbook. And what's the purpose of that? They're telling you the rules. They're telling you the standards. They're telling you the parameters. They're telling you how things work around here. Why do they do that as soon as anybody comes into the job? They do that because they are teaching you how to uphold the process that keeps the chaos and the disorder from occurring in our company. All right, we want to keep the floors clean. So every night somebody has to mop the floor. We want to keep the rodents and the any kind of scavengers from coming around the back of our store. So every night we got to make sure we take out the trash, and then the trash company comes and picks up the trash and gets it out of here. Why do we do that? Again, because if we didn't do it, you would get chaos and disorder. What happens if
the garbage truck?
Yeah, the garbage truck. That's right. Honey, my son is very smart. Did y'all see that? He heard me talking about taking out the trash, and he said the garbage truck. I didn't teach him that. So the point is, the law of entropy states anytime there is no rules, no standards, and nothing staving off the chaos, you naturally get chaos. Chaos is not something you have to try to make happen. Chaos happens naturally. It naturally occurs in the universe. And again, this is a scientific law. This is not some theory that I made up. If I had made it up, trust me, I would take ownership of it. I did not make it up. I'm just letting y'all know that it's a thing. So I'm saying all that to say this. When men are not doing their jobs in the society, you naturally get chaos and disorder. Look around in the world that we're living in now. 25 years ago, let's say the year 2000. Okay, in the year 2000, those of you who have been around long enough, if you're over the age of, let's say, what was 2025? So let's say if you're over the age of 40. Anybody who's here over the age of 40, if 20 years ago, a person came to you and said, I know you have previously known me as Mike, but now I am Mary, and my pronouns are she and her. What would you have said to that person in the year 2000 if someone came to you and said that? Y'all actually put that in the comments. That's my question. In the year 2000, I'm not asking you what you would say to them today. I'm asking, think back to your mentality and the way you thought in the year 2000. If you were at school and your classmate Mike showed up at school on Monday and said, I know last week I was Mike, but now I'm Mary and my pronouns are she and her. And they were dead serious. They're not joking. What would you have said to that person? You would have said, this person is ridiculous, right? Or, that doesn't even make any sense. No one would have even accepted it. The teacher wouldn't even accepted it. They would have sent Mike, who's now trying to call himself Mary. They would have sent Mike to the counselor. Right? Go to the counselor and talk. Something's going on with Mike. They would have called his parents and said, all right, Mike has to go home because he's acting out in class. And it would have been completely ridiculous. What's changed now is that if that happens, not only would Mike be accepted, depending on where you are, what school you go to, or what business you work in, not only will Mike be accepted, Mike would, first of all, be mandated by your institution that you have to do what now Mike, now Mary says, which means you must refer to her, quote unquote, by their preferred pronouns. When did we even start talking about pronouns? When did that become a thing? I don't know. When did it slowly started to become a thing that now people have their pronouns. I remember it was a form that was being filled up. My assistant was doing. They were asking, what are your preferred pronouns? I said, whatever that form is, don't even keep filling it out, because whoever that is, we ain't doing business with them. And not only is that, but also Mike/Mary might get a huge celebration just for the fact that they did this. They would get a whole bunch of attention just for actually doing this. This is an example, but one example of the disorder that has come into our society simply because the standards and the rules are no longer being as strongly upheld as they once were. It's not at 0, but it's no longer at 100. 25 years ago, when it came to this point, the example that I just gave, it was at 100 because nobody would even think of doing it. Now it's been lowered to, what do we want to say is that now, 40? So now this is a normal thing. Now it's a normal thing that's happening all the time. And the people who support them are going out and marching and making demands, and people are capitulating to this nonsense simply because the standards and the rules are no longer being upheld the way that they want to. So I was supposed to be talking about why men not only need to be a father to their sons, but also to your daughters. The reason you need to be a father to your daughters is so that your daughters leave home when they go, let's say, to college, or they go out into the world as a young woman. They need to understand what a masculine man looks like so they don't end up with the wrong man. See, a father who doesn't do his job of being a presence for his female children, his daughters, they're going to go out into the world not knowing what a proper man looks like. And that's how they end up dealing with the wrong type of men. You want to know how a girl ends up on, a lot of females end up on OnlyFans or doing the P word that a lot of people are against. You know how they end up in those places? Is because they didn't have a father figure around them teaching them what it looks like to get proper attention, love, and respect from a man. Hopefully he was showing it to your mother, or just period with himself. If he didn't demonstrate that, then a woman goes out into the world with a warped idea of how to get attention from a man. And the fastest way to do it is, okay, well, let me put everything I have on Instagram and then lure people to my OnlyFans and then charge money for it. Or I can get into the P word world and I can do it that way. And the whole thing, the only reason that happens is because fathers aren't fathering their daughters. And let's just leave it at that. So this is the reason why fathers need to do their jobs, period. Okay. It doesn't matter which child you have. You got 10 boys, you got 10 girls, or you got a mix of both. you have to be doing this. And by omission, again, you punish feminized men when they get old enough to date. What happens? A lot of feminized men, they go out into the world and they want to get into the dating space. I was just listening to what's the podcast called? I think it's called A Diary of a CEO. You ever heard this guy? And I've heard a couple of his interviews, and he was interviewing a woman who talks about what she called herself, a child attachment expert. This woman, I don't remember her name. And one of the things that he read off, the data he was reading off, is that a lot of men these days do not feel that they don't feel in their masculine as much as they used to. And a lot of men just don't feel hopeful and positive about their future prospects or their future situations. And that a lot of men just don't feel as hopeful. And they said, the data says, I don't know who exactly did this study, but the data is saying that men between the ages of 18 and let's say 30 are reporting having less sexual activity than they used to. This is what they're saying. Men are having less sexual activity, that men are more, what's the term that they use now? Involuntary celibate. I gotta be careful what terms I use here. I can't say certain words. The involuntary celibacy that a lot of men are dealing with, meaning they want to have sex with women, but they can't find any women who are willing to have sex with them. Therefore, they are not having as much sex as men did, let's say 25, 35, 45 years ago in the same age bracket. And why do I believe this is happening? One reason I believe it's happening is because we have a lot of feminized men who are not taught how to be men by their fathers or by any type of masculine figure. Therefore, when they go out into the world and you're a man and you may even look good, maybe you're tall, you're handsome, you got muscles, you got all this stuff. But when you engage with a woman who is in her feminine energy, she engages with you. And what's the first thing she notices about you besides your looks? She notices your feminine energy in a man. Feminine and feminine do not match. Feminine and feminine energy cannot have an intimate relationship, even if they were both attracted to women. Two women who are homosexual, there's still going to be a masculine energy and a feminine energy, even in that relationship. Same thing with two men. Two men who are homosexual, there has to be a masculine man in the relationship. There has to be a feminine man in the relationship. So a man who is in his feminine, who goes and tries to talk to a girl who is in her feminine, is not going to work. Maybe they can be on a surface level attracted, but it's not going to last forever. It's not going to last very long simply because two feminine energies are going to clash. It's not going to work. It's like two masculine energies. So if you're a man and you're in your masculine and you go talk to a girl and she turns out to be very much in her masculine, then that's not going to work either because two masculine energies are going to clash. And I've seen this. I touched on this a little bit. Not going to be the topic here today, but actually it could be. I've seen women talk about, well, hey, I make enough money and I'm successful enough in my career and I have enough resources where I want to have my own family. I want to have a kid through some type of scientific process, medical process. I'm going to have the kid without having an actual man in the life, and I'll just raise the kid by myself. And I've seen women talk about this, and these are women who are very, very strongly in their masculine. And I'm not even going to use their names, but very strongly in their masculine, just the way that they talk. The way they talk about themselves. I got this, I got that. I can take care of myself. I don't need a man in my life. That's a very masculine frame for a woman to even talk like that. And this is the reason why. And then at the same time, this woman being as successful of a woman as she is, she can't get a masculine man to want to deal with her because a masculine man's gonna look at her and say, okay, well, I'm gonna be competing with you. Well, I'm gonna be in a relationship with a woman that's trying to beat me. Now she's trying to compete with me. What do I need to be in a relationship with this woman? And this is the issue. And I understand by the women who are out there. I'm sure there are some single women listening to me right now saying that you can't find the type of man that you want to be with. One of the reasons that you get these masculine energy women, and you get a lot more of them now than you had back in the day, even again 30 years ago, a lot more masculine energy women, is because they look around and they see a lot of feminized men. So by nature, they immediately go into their masculine because you're in your feminine. Somebody got to be masculine. Somebody has to be feminine. So the masculine energy women, I will take them to task on a different day in a different conversation, but I understand why they are because there's a whole bunch of feminine men running around and they can't find the man who is willing to or is masculine enough to allow them to step back into their feminine. So I understand how and why this occurs. Doesn't mean it's okay for you to just stay there, ladies, but again, not the topic here today. So get into the traits of toxic femininity, which I haven't even done yet. That's just the background. All right. So here's some of the traits of toxic femininity. And I'm specifically talking about men who are in a toxic feminine energy. You want to get down? Or you want to stay up here? You want to stay here? Or you want to get down? What do you want to do? You stay up or get down?
Get down.
You want to get down? Okay. Son couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. Number one, you have a problem with objective and logical arguments. This is what I run into often on these live streams is I'll be trying to be as objective as possible. It's impossible for any human to be completely objective because every human has their own subjective reasons for looking at things the way that they do. But I try to make my arguments as logical as possible and as objective as possible. And I am always looking for what is the truth of a situation because I have no affiliation to any side or any frame or any political party or anything like that. And nobody is paying me to say certain things or anything like that, regardless of what you may think, just because you may disagree with my opinion. And that's what I'm always aiming to do. And what I find is that feminine energy men have a real strong issue anytime someone's coming to them with a logical, objective argument that does not delve into emotions and personalization of the situation. So women do this too. And let's be clear. Here's the thing I'll say about a woman. If I'm having a conversation with a woman and we disagree on a subject, and the woman starts getting into her emotions and starts getting angry and starts kind of spouting off at the mouth or may even attack me personally because I'm disagreeing with her logically, I understand it. Why? Because when I'm talking to a woman, I expect femininity. If I'm talking to a female, I expect the female to be feminine, which means if we are disagreeing, I understand when a woman decides to, instead of talking about the actual subject on which we disagree, she may start talking about me personally or attacking me or getting mad at me or getting emotional in the conversation simply because she is so upset about the fact that we are disagreeing. I get it when a woman does it. I may not fully enjoy it, but I understand. I don't really have a problem. I'm not looking at the woman like she's crazy because this is what women do. Now, if I'm talking to a man and he starts doing it, this I have a problem with. This is toxic femininity. Two men should be able to have a conversation about a subject upon which we disagree, yet keep the conversation logical, objective, and just overall respectful between two men. Even if it's on the internet and you have no accountability to be held to by the man that you're talking to, doesn't mean you just start talking crazy to a man just because you're on the internet and your name and face are hidden and you may never see this man in person. And if you did, he wouldn't know who you are, but you would know who he is. That still doesn't make it okay. My rule that I tell men, and I will put this to women as well, but I want to hold the men accountable here today, is do not say anything to anyone on the internet that you wouldn't say to their face. So when I get done with this, going through my points and I get to the comments and I start responding to the things that y'all are saying in the comments, I'm sure there are going to be people disagreeing with me, but I'm not going to say anything to you through this screen that I would not say to you if you were sitting right here across from me. That's the rule that I hold myself to that standard. And I tell people to hold themselves to that standard, especially the males, because again, in real life off the internet, in the era that I come from, again, if you're over the age of 40, any of you over the age of 40 knows this 100%. Before social media was a thing, the only way that you could really engage with another person was you had to actually talk to them in the flesh. Now, of course, you had physical mail. We usually didn't send letters to our friends. And then you had the phone. You could talk to somebody on the phone. But the only way you could speak to somebody on the phone usually is if you knew them from somewhere and they knew you from somewhere, which meant at some point, inevitably, whatever happened in that phone conversation, you're going to see this person in person again. And at which point you could and would be held accountable for anything that you said on the phone. And the era that we come from, those of you who are over the age of, let's say even 35, because you didn't have to be that old to understand this. You could be 10 years old and get this. Anything that you said to another person, you could be immediately held accountable for what you just said. You're at the playground, at the park, playing with your friends, and you say something to somebody that they didn't like, you might get punched in your face. That's the era that all of you remember this. Again, you're over 35, you know exactly what this was. Maybe you punched somebody in the face once. Maybe somebody punched you in the face. I suggest everybody should have the experience on both ends, especially males. But I digress from my point. Social media has created a platform where people can talk crazy to other people who you don't know and get away with it. And if you do this so often, you may start to believe this is just normal life. I can just say anything to anybody, then nothing's going to happen to me because you have the distance of the internet and the screen. And again, you may even be anonymous to where nobody could find you anyway. And here's the problem. Here's the reason why this is a problem. Because if it just stayed on the internet, that'd be one thing. But what happens is most people eventually put their phones down and you do engage with other human beings. You may not do it as much as we used to have to do it because now we have this option. But eventually every human, no matter how much you use the internet, eventually you talk to a person in real life. Now, if you've been so conditioned that I can say anything to anybody and nothing's going to happen to me, you might put your phone down and talk to somebody in real life the way you would through TikTok until you realize, oh, that person's right there in front of me and they don't like what I just said. And now you are ill prepared to deal with the response of that person. This is one of the problems. And I see this on social media often. People just talking crazy to people who they don't know. And again, you can get away with it because they don't know who you are. And again, your name and face are hidden. What's going to happen to you? Essentially, nothing's going to happen to you. The problem is conditioning people to think that this is normal. And then when you go talk to somebody in real life, which eventually we all have to do, now you have a problem that you're not prepared to deal with. So if you do this, again, this is toxic femininity. And I see this behavior distributed, again, about 50-50 between males and females. I see women doing this too, talking all kinds of reckless to people who they don't know in person and online. And what I'm talking about here is when something's objectively true, when a facts or the truth, I'd rather say the truth than just say facts, are laid out in front of a person simply because those truths and facts may conflict with your emotions, you got to be willing to put your emotions aside and accept the reality of what's being put in front of you. And again, I'm holding men accountable to this much more than the women. A woman, you can give her all the logic in the world. If she is in her emotions, it doesn't matter what you said. Any of you men out there who have been in an argument with a woman, especially a woman who you're in a relationship with, you know this to be very true. If a woman's in her emotions, you're not going to logic her out of it. It is impossible. Trust me, I've tried and it didn't work. And many of you have tried and it doesn't work. And the ladies out there, you know that men have tried and you know that it doesn't work. Now, if two men are having a conversation, however, a man should be, man should be able to say, hey, I feel this way, but the logic and the truth being put in front of me on the other side of the conversation clearly makes it clear that the way I feel is based on information that was inaccurate. Now that I have this accurate information, I got to be willing to step back and say, okay, now I'm going to look at this differently. A man should be able to say that. And what I found is that many men don't have this capability. This is toxic femininity. Moving on. I can accept when a female does this, as I just explained. When a female's in her toxic energy, these kind of things naturally occur. Women naturally start spouting off. They get into their emotions, and logically, nothing's going to get through. But the same way, when a man is in his toxic energy, when a man is in toxic masculine energy, here's what men do. Men are in toxic masculine energy. They seek to dominate. They become argumentative. They try to argue their points even stronger. They can even become aggressive, whether physically or verbally or even passively. Now, when I talk about toxic femininity, passive aggression is one of those things. I'm not a fan of passive aggression in men. I don't like when men get passive aggressive. And I'll call men out on their passive aggression. When I see a man being passive aggressive, I'll call him out and say, look, if you have something to say, just say it. If you feel something and something needs to be put on the table, put it on the table so we can address it, but don't be a bitch about it. And I'll tell men that, like, don't be a bitch about it. And when you tell a man don't be a bitch, what are you saying? Don't be a female in her toxic. All right. When a female's in her toxic, she gets to bitching or being a bitch. That's the language that all of you are familiar with. We all use it. When you see a man doing it, then again, he's being a bitch. All right. Don't be a bitch. Don't be a female. All right. I just want you to say whatever it is that you want to say. Don't be passive aggressive. And if I see a man being passive aggressive, I'm going to call on him to be direct. I'm a very direct person. And being direct aggressive does not necessarily mean you're out looking for a fight or you're challenging people for no reason or you are being a jerk to people for no reason. I'm not, none of those things. But if I do have something that needs to be said, whether I'm talking to a man or a female, I'm going to make sure that it's said and I'm going to make sure it's clear and I'm going to make sure everyone understands exactly where I stand. If you are listening to me or you've been listening to my live streams, I think all of you can understand it. Doesn't mean you need to agree with me. It doesn't mean I'm going to convince everyone to see things my way, even though I think I'm pretty good at it. And not everybody's going to agree with me no matter what I said. But nobody is ever going to listen to me and be unclear as to what I said or unclear as to where I stand. And I apply that in my personal life. I apply it in my business. I apply it in any type of communication that I have. But no one's ever going to say, Dre, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Nobody's going to say that to me because you're going to know exactly what I mean. And that's a communication skill. And it's also an emotional / mental thing because you have to have the internal fortitude to communicate something to someone that may disturb them and not be afraid to get the point across as clearly and directly as possible. And a lot of men, I found, do not have this ability. They don't have this capability. Or actually, let me not say it that way. I think most men have this capability. Most men are unwilling to use it. That's what I think it is. Give you an example. A couple days ago, what's today? I'm recording this on a Wednesday for those who are watching on replay. So on Sunday afternoon, I was having a conversation with a woman who is older than me. This woman's probably in her 60s. And she was talking to me about possibly having me help her with some of her business stuff. And this woman I'm talking to her, I'm asking her questions, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly her challenge is and how exactly I can help her. And she was too many times, she was talking over me and I was asking her questions and she was kind of stonewalling on the questions that I was asking. And she was being somewhat uncooperative. She was in her masculine. Let's just put it that way. She was getting into her masculine while talking to me. And the first couple of times she did it, I was kind of letting it go because I was just letting her talk just to figure out what she was saying. But as we got further into the conversation, I had to check her. And I told her the following. I said to her, listen, you keep interrupting me when I'm asking you a question. You're not allowing me to give you the full question, so you can't quite answer it. And you're giving me the same things over and over again when I'm asking you different questions. And I let her know, because what she was telling me that she had a son who plays basketball. And I gave her the analogy that, listen, if your son is on a basketball team and the coach is either asking him a question or he is telling your son something in front of the team, your son cannot interrupt the coach and tell the coach what he thinks. He'll get kicked off the team if he does that. And I said to this woman, woman, you are coming to me to be your coach. If you want me to be your coach and I'm telling you something or asking you something, I need you to shut the fuck up so I can make my point. And she was saying, well, she was trying to explain herself and how it was okay and how she thinks it's probably the way she talks to everybody. I'm sure this is just her normal mode of operation, and most of the people around her are okay with it. I said to her, listen, it may be true that you talk to other people like this. You probably talk to your son like this. You talk to other males like this, and they allow it. I'm telling you that I'm not okay with it. So if we're going to continue this conversation, I need you to slow down. And when I'm talking, I need you to be quiet. And she was quiet for a few seconds as she processed what I had said to her. And it's interesting when you say something to someone that you can tell that they're not used to having someone talk to them that way. They just sit there and they're trying to process what to say back. And generally, she got a lot more quiet for the rest of the conversation, a lot more quiet and a lot more calm. I'm telling you that not to impress you, but to impress upon you that a lot of men are unwilling to have that kind of conversation with other people. I don't care if you're talking to a man or a woman. That's about your frame. That's not about you having the perfect words. It's about having the right frame, because you don't have to have the articulateness to say it in the exact way that maybe I said it or somebody else said it. It's not about having a script. It's about your willingness to stand on, hey, this is where I'm at. I don't like the way this conversation is going energetically. Let me reset the frame of how we're going to have this conversation. A lot of men are unwilling to do that when they're talking to other people. And that's how situations start small and they get bigger. And if you don't catch it in the beginning, then it only gets worse. Same thing with raising kids. I mean, when your kid does something they're not supposed to do and you don't do anything, well, they're going to keep doing it. And eventually they're going to do worse things and worse things and worse things. And then when you finally try to corral them and get them to come back to where they need to be, they're so used to doing things the way they want to. Now it's hard to get them back. So this becomes a molehill turns into a mountain when people aren't upholding standards. What I just tell you about the law of entropy, when you don't uphold standards and rules, then eventually there are no standards and rules, and you get more chaos and you get more disorder. Does this happen with kids? Of course it does. If you don't establish the rules from the beginning, then the kids feel, okay, there are no rules. I can do whatever I want. And then when you try to come in later and establish rules, now they don't want to listen to you because you've already established that they don't have to. So remember, I was telling somebody, give you a story. I was telling someone, I will say this person is a man, and I will say that this man is, again, my parents' age. This guy over the age of 60. I was talking to him we were talking about like racial topics, and similar to what I was talking about yesterday. And the topic yesterday was, can black people be racist? If you want to see that replay, is on my YouTube channel, and my YouTube link is in my profile. Also my Instagram. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and YouTube. Those of you watching on TikTok, because I've been suspended on TikTok 8 times in the last 7 months. Yesterday, I won my appeal to my suspension, but I might get suspended again depending on what I'm talking about. So disclaimer for all of you watching on TikTok. Make sure you follow my YouTube, because that will happen again, guaranteed. So anyway, I'm talking to this man, black man. We were talking about race in America, and we were disagreeing on certain things. And he was saying, well, he was basically blaming the government and white people for certain things. And I said, well, what about what black people do to each other? He said, well, what are black people doing? I told him, well, have you looked at the rates of violent crimes of black people committed against other black people? And by the way, I'm going to do a whole conversation on black crime. Y'all told me yesterday y'all want me to do that. That's coming. That'll probably be, I think I might be doing it tomorrow. Let me see. Just looking at my notes here. Yeah, actually, I'm going to do it tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to do the topic on black crime. But let me finish where I'm at here today. So having this conversation with this male, and where am I here? So I'm having this conversation with this male, and he says, well, what are the stats? And I told him what the stats were. And the stats are pretty much that the amount of violent crime that black people commit on black people is equal to the amount of violent crime that white people commit on white people, even though there are 5 times more white people than black people, which means the rate of violent crime is 5 times higher in the black community than it is in the white community. And what this guy said was he didn't believe me. He didn't believe I just told him that. I didn't show him anything. I just told him. And he said, well, show me the data. Show me the stats. This is usually the thing that people say when you present something that they don't believe to be true and they think that you can't prove it, but then I actually proved it. I grabbed the link and I sent it to him. I said, here's the link right here. Look at it. You know what this guy said to me? And you want to guess what he said to me when I showed him this? So I'm going to tell you our situation again. I want one of you to tell me what you think he said. So let me reset the frame. I told him that black on black violence is equal to white on white violence in terms of raw numbers, which means it's 5 times higher in terms of rates simply because there are 5 times more white people than black people. So how do we get the same number when it's 5 times more of them than it is us? He said, show me the data. I showed him the data. What do you think he said? What do you think his response was? Now, remember the conversation here today. We're talking about toxic femininity. So I'm talking about a man who was in his feminine energy, at least at that moment. Because here's a good thing about feminine energy. You can get in it and get out of it. So a man can be bitching 1 minute, but he can get back to his masculine if you check him on it. What do you think this man said? So someone said it's not a .gov. No, he didn't say that because it was a .gov. I was showing him a .gov website. So he didn't say that. Someone said he said that it's not true. LOL. Dolly Mac, you're kind of on the wave of what he said. Fake news. No, he didn't say it was fake news. Carly, he did not say it was racist. This is 2 black people talking. Q Cipher said he said some goofy shit. Well, he did. Yeah, I showed him the data. This is after I showed him the data. 0126. Here's what he said. He said, I don't believe it because the government can make up stats. It was a government website that I sent in. That's what he said. He said, I don't believe it because the government can make up stats. Now, let me tell you something about this man who I was having a conversation with. Here's what I know for a fact about this man. That in 2020, when the virus was around, or into 2021, he was lined up immediately to take the jab. Then he took all the boosters. And who told you to take the jab and the boosters? All right, that wasn't his doctor, because I don't think he even goes to the doctor, this guy. Who told him that? The government. You saw it on TV, right? The government told you. Trump told you, then Biden told you the same thing. All right, they both said it. Both sides said it politically. They both said, take the jab. So you trusted the government then, but now you don't trust the government as soon as you hear something that you don't like. This is feminine energy. This is what I mean by toxic femininity in a man. That you're okay with accepting a source when it's something that you agree with, but as soon as that same source tells you something that you don't agree with, all of a sudden you don't trust it and you don't believe it. That doesn't make any sense. That's toxic femininity. And again, and when women do this, I get it. Again, I've been in many conversations with a woman where she makes some logical point and I say, fine. And then when I make a similar logical point using a similar frame, but she disagrees with it emotionally, she wants to reject it. And I'm like, yo, I just showed you this. What are you talking about? And I'm giving her the logic and she doesn't want to hear it because she's in her emotions. Again, I get it when a woman does it. I expect it from a woman. I don't want to deal with a woman who can't do this. I want to deal with a woman who conducts herself like a man. I ain't into that. But when a man does it, this is a problem. This is toxic femininity. And again, this is a man in toxic feminine energy. And when men get into their toxic feminine, this is a problem. Because again, what are women supposed to do when the men are acting like women? Exactly what they are doing. This is the reason why feminism is a thing. The reason why it's becoming more popular. Next trait of a toxic feminine man is when your feelings matter more than the facts. Now, there are times when your feelings do matter more than the facts. If you can get yourself emotionally keyed up on a certain subject or for something that you need to do, your emotions and the energy from those emotions can overcome the facts that previously were barriers for you. And that's a good thing. So if you learn how to channel and control your emotions, they're actually very powerful things to use if you learn to use them the right way. I'm talking specifically to men, because a man who can use his energy and channel it into, his emotions, channel those emotions into energy and that energy into action can achieve groundbreaking things. A man can defy logic and can defy objectivity if he channels his energy in the right way. So anytime you hear of a story of a man who did something that seemed impossible, a man who did something that most people thought he probably couldn't do, just looking at the facts of the situation, if he gets into the right energetic state, he can do it anyway. Because you look at any superhero movies, look at Rocky or something like that. Does it make any sense that Rocky could win the fight? No, but then he won the fight. Why? Because he channeled his emotions into energy, that energy into action, those actions into outcomes. That's a good thing. But you cannot let reality be distorted by your emotions and your feelings all the time. And this is the issue. And you cannot ignore reality to defer to your feelings and defer to your emotions. And again, as I just explained, feelings and emotions do matter, and they are very useful in the right place. But in a performance and a results-based business, everyone, whether male or female, you have to know when to put your feelings aside and focus on the reality that is in front of you. To give you an example, my background is in playing basketball. Some of you know that. You followed me before. I used to create content online for basketball players. So from 2005 to 2015, I would create a ton of basketball content. Like literally every day I was putting out basketball content, teaching players how to practice basketball, how to get better, how to shoot, how to dribble, how to do the crossover move, etc., how to get in shape for basketball. And I would talk to them about how to advance in basketball. So how do you make the high school team? How do you go walk on and play in college? If you want to play overseas professionally, how do you do it? I talked about all that stuff. Anything you could do in basketball, I got a video on YouTube about it to this very day. And because of this, I got a lot of basketball players reaching out to me who wanted to ascend in basketball. The issue with ascending in basketball is that being a basketball player or an entertainer or athlete, let's just call it that. Entertainment and athletics are places where we know the names. Most of you know the name Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, LeBron James, Steph Curry. You know your favorite actors and actresses, Denzel Washington, Angelina Jolie, et cetera, et cetera. These people become very famous. And one of the reasons they become famous is, of course, their talent, but also because they're in a job that not everybody can get. Being an athlete or entertainer is not like being a doctor or a lawyer. Doctors and lawyers are looked up to. Like someone tells you they're a doctor or a lawyer, you have a certain level of respect for their profession because the professions are looked at respectfully. And you know that you can pretty much create life success if you can get into those industries and just be okay. The issue is in the comparison between the two is that everyone who passes the medical boards and gets licensed technically can become a doctor. Everyone who passes the, what do they call it? The bar exam in whatever state, technically you can practice law. Everyone can do it. So if 10 people do it, then you got 10 new lawyers. If 100 people do it, you got 100 lawyers. If 1,000 people do it, you got 1,000 lawyers. Sports and entertainment don't work that way. Sports and entertainment are limited. They are exclusive, not inclusive. They are exclusive, meaning if there are in the NBA, let's say next season, there are 50 open roster spots. There are 50 roster spots that need to be filled by somebody, but there are 100 players who are good enough, quote unquote, to play in the NBA. There are going to be 50 disappointed people. And it's not like everybody who is good enough gets to play. That's the issue in the sports world and the entertainment world. You could be good enough to be an A-list actor, but the problem is there are only so many A-list actors. Everybody can't get in. So if there are spots for 10 A-list actors, but there are 20 people who are good enough to be A-list, 10 of them are going to get in and 20 of them are going to be disappointed. They're going to have to be B-list. You get it? That's the difference with the entertainment and sports world as compared to the wider professional world where everyone who is quote unquote qualified technically can get in the door. In the doctor world, the legal world, the medical world, you can do that. The sports world, you can't. I'm bringing all that up to say this. I would get a lot of athletes reaching out to me because I was known for helping people with basketball and their careers who would say, hey, I believe that I can make it as a basketball player. And the issue would be this guy I'm talking to some guy. He's 25 years old, didn't play on his high school team, didn't play in college, but he truly believes he's good enough to play in the NBA. I talked to 1,000 young men who had this issue. Again, didn't play in high school, didn't even play in college, but he believes in his bones, in his heart of hearts, he is good enough to play in the NBA. Now, is this possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it probable? No, it is not. The thing is, I barely played high school ball and I walked on to play college ball at the Division III level. Then I went on to have a professional career. So it's not like I could look at them and say, nah, you're not going to make it, because they would look at me and say, well, Dre, you did it. So thing is, I would talk to them and see what their situation was. Most of these players, I'm just talking to them. So I have no idea how they actually play on the court. The issue is I talked to too many men who had this mindset and there were not enough spots available in the world for all of them to fill a spot. There wasn't enough. And the thing is, with sports and entertainment, especially, this is one area, especially where this is true, is that a man needs to learn when to walk away. And it's very hard for men to walk away from something like this because your ego is attached to it, especially if a lot of people know that you're trying to make it happen. You know that it's kind of like a winning lottery ticket. To make it to the NBA is a winning lottery ticket. Even though you had to earn it, you're still like winning the lottery because there are so few people who get a chance to make it. Or swap out the NBA for the NFL, Major League Baseball, getting your big break on TV or in the movies, whatever it is. Anything athletics or entertainment. It's very hard to get in, and you got to know when to walk away. As the song goes, you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them. You got to know when to put your feelings aside and put your ego aside and do what makes the most sense for you as a man, especially if you have a family, especially if you have bills that need to be paid, et cetera, et cetera. You got to know when to walk away from things. And I remember I was talking to this guy. He was asking me these questions. I interviewed him, basically, was answering questions for him. And he was like 25 and he had barely played anywhere, but he believed he could make it to the NBA and he wanted to try out for the G League. And I could tell he kind of didn't have it all mentally, but he was having a conversation. And I remember I put it out there. I put it out on the internet for it to be heard. And about a week later, some members of his family reached out to me via email and said, hey, we've been dealing with this guy for several years. This is a family member. And they were like, we appreciate you for taking it easy on him and not kind of outing him and making him sound ridiculous, because he did sound ridiculous, but I was being nice to him in the conversation, because this happens with a lot of people who just don't know when to walk away from something that clearly isn't going the way they want it to go. And again, you have to know when to put your feelings aside and focus on what's true and what's real and what's in front of you. Again, with a limited amount of time. All that being said, moving on to the next point. There is nuance to this. Let me give the nuance. The nuance is very important. And again, I could not, in good faith, stand in front of you and say that you always have to look at the quote unquote facts of a situation and put your feelings aside. I couldn't stand in front of you and say that, because I became a professional athlete, which is something that most people never get a chance to do. And I did it against, most professional athletes will tell you they did it against the odds. Almost every athlete says that. You know, LeBron James might be one of the most talented athletes you've ever seen in your life. If you ask him, he will tell you that his making it as a pro athlete was against the odds. Like, everybody says it. Everybody who makes it as an athlete says I wasn't supposed to make it. Tom Brady tell you I wasn't supposed to make it. Michael Jordan tell you. Every athlete tells you I wasn't supposed to make it. Serena Williams will tell you it. Beyonce will tell you they weren't supposed to make it. They all say that. All right. So everybody who makes it is making it against the odds. And technically they're all right. And this is the point. The odds are the facts. The odds are the reality. The reality is, a teacher says to a student, well, there's only 1 in a million chance. I think it was Kobe Bryant I heard say this, that he was in school, in like middle school, and he told his teacher, I want to make it to the NBA. And his teacher said, well, only 1 in a million players makes it to the NBA. You know what Kobe Bryant said? Kobe said, well, I'm going to be that one. You have to be, what's the word that I want to use here? Ignorant enough, for lack of a better term. You got to be stupid enough, ridiculous enough to believe that you're the one who's going to make it amongst all the people who are also going to try, and they're all going to fail. You got to be the one who believes you're going to make it. And here's the reality. Somebody is going to make it. Somebody's going to be that 1 in a million. So why not try? Again, Kobe Bryant said, I'm going to be that one. And he became that one. Now, for every Kobe Bryant that you know, there are a whole bunch of other people who you don't know who said they were going to be the one and they didn't make it. The issue is Kobe Bryant is famous. All of you know who Kobe Bryant is. So if a young man that you know, he's 14, he says he's going to be that 1 in a million, and his inspiration is Kobe Bryant, you can't look at him and say, you can't try. You can tell him the reality, which is only 1 in a million make it. And it's going to be very difficult. And it's going to be a whole bunch of other people with talent who are also going to be trying. But you can't tell him that he can't try, because somebody has to make that spot. So again, I'm not telling you that you always have to go with the facts. Because if you always go with the facts, you're going to end up a very average individual. And that's for everybody, males and females. If every decision you make in your life is just based off of what is objectively and logically true, you will end up an extremely average person, because that's how most people operate. They just look at what's true, what's objective, what's realistic. Another term I'm not really a fan of. What is realistic? And they make all their decisions based off that. All right, those are your average people. Those are your masses of people. Nondescript people who have nothing really interesting about them. There's nothing really terrible about them, but there's nothing great about them. You meet them, talk to them, and forget them as soon as you walk away. Those are the people who always follow the logic and the facts and the objectivity. There is a time in life, and it's especially true for men. I'm speaking from the male perspective. There's a time in life you got to look at what's factually true and say, so what? I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to make it work anyway. Now, whether that ends up being a good idea or not, a good decision or not, is based on the outcome. Life is a results-based business. This is the two keys of what we do here at my company, is that this is a performance and a results-based business. All of life is a performance and a results-based business. You will be judged on your performance and the results of that performance. So if you decide to throw caution to the wind and take all the facts and all the logic and say, I'm going to throw all that away and I'm going to try to make it happen anyway. I'm going to try to be that 1 in a million like Kobe at whatever it is you're trying to do. If you end up doing it, you become a hero. And other people will be inspired by you and by your story, because you did it. You went against the grain and you made it happen. And the next million people who all think they're going to do it, they're going to be inspired by and look up to you because you did it. Now, on the other hand, if you fail and you come up short, nobody's going to remember you. Nobody's going to talk about you. But at least you got the experience of trying. And then you got to move on to whatever the next thing is going to be. This is just how it works, folks. There's no guarantees up front. I'll get a lot of young men reaching out to me. And my target audience at that time was 13 to 24-year-old young men who want to play basketball aspiringly. I'll get a lot of young men reaching out to me and saying, well, Dre, do you believe This is the frame they always use. Do you believe if I do all your drills and buy all your programs and do all the workouts and work really hard and don't do anything else and just focus on basketball, do you believe I can make it to the NBA, or can I make it to playing overseas, or can I make it to getting a college scholarship? I would get young men asking me that question with that frame all the time. I would tell them the same thing I just told you. You can't get a guarantee of results until you put in the effort, and you got to put in the time. And the trade-off is if you end up not getting it, you use your effort and your time for something that ended up not happening. That's the trade-off. That's the risk that you take when you go after this. When you try to make it in something that not everybody can make it, no matter how good you are, that's the risk that you take, that you might fail. You might come up short. But if you want it, you have to take a risk. This is the reason why people look up to athletes and entertainers, if you want to know. And some of you look up to some athletes and entertainers. The real reason you look up to them is not because you love their last album, or because he scored 30 points in the game last night, or because this guy can throw a fastball 100 miles per hour. That's not really why you look up to them. The reason why people look up to athletes and entertainers is because they went after their dreams and they actually made it, period. Y'all remember that movie with, what was the movie with George Clooney where he had that young girl that was like shadowing him and he would just go around firing people? What was the name of that movie? Somebody tell me the name of that movie. Where George Clooney, it was George Clooney, I remember him, and he had the young girl who was like his apprentice, and he would go into companies that were about to fire a bunch of people. They would do layoffs, and then he would just fire them, and then he would look at their employee file, and then he would kind of suggest to them what to do next. Yes, Up in the Air. JB, thank you for telling. And then he that was the same movie where he fell in love with some woman, and then he went to visit her house, and it turned out she was actually married, and he was just like, she was basically using him. That was the same movie, right? So I'm bringing that up because I remember seeing that movie. I wasn't really wholly watching it, but I remember it was on. And George Clooney, he would go into these companies and he firing somebody, and sometimes people would cry, sometimes people would get angry, they would get mad, they had to call security and things like that. And I remember he was talking to somebody, he was looking at their file, and they had done something in the past, but they went and got a corporate job instead of doing that thing. And he looked at them and he said, "Do you know why kids like athletes?" And he said, "Because they followed their dreams." And this is the point that, and again, I had to give this disclaimer because I would be remiss if I didn't give this disclaimer as a person who's been an athlete myself and a person who risked a lot to go and try to make it when it looked like it wasn't going to happen. So you have to know when is it the time to go after something that seems completely irrational. And men understand this very well. Women, you probably understand it too. But again, I'm speaking from a male frame. I have no experience of being a woman. And from the male frame, there is a time when you have to go after what you want, even if logically and objectively and reality wise, it makes no sense. And the people around you who love you and want the best for you are going to tell you, don't do this because, again, what's the chances? Again, remember the movie Rocky? All right. You see him, you know how strong he is. You can't win. All right? You have no chance. But Rocky went after his dream. The reason why Rocky is a famous movie is because of that. He went after his dream, even though it seemed completely irrational and nobody believed he was going to make it. The people who get looked up to the most in the world are the people who did what did not seem to make any sense, and they did it anyway. The masses of people are the people who only did the things that made sense. This is just life. This is just the way life works. So that's the nuance to the point that I have to make sure I put in there. I cannot leave that nuance out. Everybody needs to understand it. So moving on. Last point here we're going to make about toxic femininity is the heavy use of sign language. And I don't mean sign language like talking to people who are deaf and they can't hear, but it's a metaphor. So the person I give credit to for this, I don't know if he created it, but he's the one who popularized it in my mind, was a guy named Kevin Samuels. Y'all remember Kevin Samuels? Some of you know who he is. Many of you may not even know who he is. So Kevin Samuels was a guy who he passed away about 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. And he used to do a bunch of what's going on, Angelica, 2008. He used to do videos on, I believe when he first came out online, he was very popular on YouTube and he would be on all these socials. He used to make videos for men, just talking about men, like how to dress and how to cut your hair and how to shave and what products to use and hygiene and all these things for men. Basically, male development is what he used to talk about. But then he pivoted, and I didn't know who he was at this time. Then he pivoted to talking about women and relationships. And I wasn't paying attention to that either, but his name started to kind of percolate on social media. And one day he did this whole video. Some of you remember this. It was the average at best video. He was talking to this woman because he would do these long live streams, kind of like what I do. He would do these long live streams, and then he would let women come on his Zoom, and he would have conversations with them about whatever the subject was. And he had a woman come on there, and she was basically talking about her struggles finding the right type of man. And at one point in the conversation, Kevin asked her to rate herself, and she rated herself as pretty average. And then later on in the conversation, he's trying to give this woman a reality check. He says to her, "You are average at best." And that little clip, and when he told the woman she was average at best, this clip just went super viral on the internet and everybody was talking about it. And that's when I heard of Kevin Samuels. And then I started listening to some of his material, and I'm like, the things that this guy's saying is perfectly on point. He was talking about relationships, and a lot of his videos are still online. And he passed away about 3 years ago. He was young. He was like early 50s when he passed away. I believe he was a survivor of cancer, and who knows what happened to him, but he ended up passing away. But whoever got control of his assets, they're still putting his videos out. So every once in a while, I see a new video from him coming out. They basically just taking old stuff that he had and putting it out in new frames. But anyway, he's the guy who I first heard use this term sign language. What does sign language mean? And he was talking about women when he said this. He said, when a woman gets into her toxicity, he didn't say this in so many words. I'm saying it in my words. That they start doing shame, that's the S, insults, that's the I, guilt, that's the G, and the need to be right, that's the N. Sign language, SIGN. Shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. Now, do women do this when they get into their toxicity? The answer is absolutely yes. If you're a man, you ever been in an argument with a woman, you know that she does. Is if you think about it, you may not have known about sign language. Just think about it. That's exactly what they'll do. Shame you. They'll shame you for whatever it is that you said or whatever you're doing. They'll insult you, personally attack you to try to get you off of your square of what the actual conversation is about, was usually not about personally attacking you. Then it's the guilt. They'll guilt you into making them sad. For example, I remember I was working at a sales job once, and this one of my female coworkers, she tried to steal a sale from me. She tried to snake me out of a sale and get the commission. And I argued to get my commission back. And while we're in the conversation, arguing over who should get the commission in front of the sales manager, guess what the girl started doing? She starts crying. So, of course, now she's a damsel in distress, and I'm the tough bad guy who made her cry. What is that? That's guilting me. She was trying to guilt me and guilt the manager into siding with her because she was upset because she was crying. Women do this in arguments. Any of you women listening to this want to own up to this? Y'all know y'all do this. This is what women do when they get in an argument with a man, and the man is clearly right. The woman will start crying to make him guilty and get off his square of actually being right because she doesn't want to admit that he's right, which leads to the last point, the need to be right. How many of you ever been in an argument with a woman and your argument was airtight? It wasn't shit she could say, and then she just changed the subject to something else that she could be right about just so she could have the last word in the conversation. Ladies who are listening to this, don't bullshit. Y'all know y'all do this. This is what women do. When they know they've lost and they got nothing else, they'll change the subject so they can find something to be right about. Shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. Women absolutely do this all the time. Any men listening to this, y'all know that women do this. You ever been in an argument with a woman, they do it. And if you've never been in an argument with a woman, trust me, they will do it. So just keep this in mind. Now, all that said, this is not really about women. I told you, this is toxic femininity in men. When men start doing these things, this is a problem. Again, I just told you. Two men should be able to have a conversation, disagree on the subject. One of them may make a better argument than the other. And then one of them should be able to say, you know what? Your argument, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for opening my eyes. Thank you for sharing information with me that I didn't see before. I understand now. Thank you for giving me more knowledge and schooling me on this subject. I appreciate that. Thanks for the information. Now, here's the thing. Do you ever hear men say that? Very rarely do you hear men say that. You should hear more men say it. One reason why men don't say this is because people tend to jump into conversations holding a position upon which they have no real reason to hold the position. This is an issue. You shouldn't do this. Anytime you get in a conversation on a subject in which you know that you don't know everything, you should just walk into the conversation open-minded enough to where maybe you have a position or an opinion. You say, hey, I don't know everything about this subject, but my opinion is, my frame is, my belief is, my understanding of the situation is this. Then you can go to somebody who might know more, or maybe they know more, maybe they don't know anything, but you can ask them, hey, what do you think about my position? Where do you stand on this? What are your thoughts on this? What's your opinion or what's your belief on this situation? If you frame it that way, now you're not painting yourself into a corner of where you had to defend a certain position because you staked your claim on a subject upon which you know that you don't know everything. And now if you know what you know, if you know that you know what you're talking about, then go ahead, hold your position and say, I'm just going to talk how I want to talk. But if you know that you don't know everything, you should be willing to just say, hey, here's what I see. Here's what I believe. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? And ask an open-ended question and let somebody else tell you what they think. Maybe they agree, maybe they disagree, but either way, you're leaving the conversation open to where you don't have to claim a position. What I find these days, though, a lot of people are just claiming positions on things without having any real knowledge or information on the subject. And this is especially true when it comes to social issues, when it comes to political issues and current events, because we've been incentivized to have a strong position because strong positions tend to draw a lot of engagement and entertainment. And social media is all about engagement. And usually you engage people by entertaining them, which means being as hyperbolic and as passionate as possible on the subject, even if you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. It works. So for men, be careful that you're not using sign language. You're not shaming another man for having a certain position. I've seen a lot of this. When I talk about moralizers, I told you moralizers is one of the 3 types of men that I'm not a fan of, or 3 types of people, period. Women too, that I don't like. Moralizers often use shame as their number 1 tool. That's their whole thing. Moralizing is shaming other people for what they did compared to how you would do things. That's moralizing. You're shaming people. And I don't like when men moralize, because there is no man qualified to shame another man based on what he did, because we don't know about all the stuff you did. We put all of your life out there on the internet and got 1,000 people out there whose very job is to go hunt down anything that makes you look bad. I guarantee people could figure out a way to make you look bad within 24 hours. I'm talking to every man who's listening to this right now. If I send 1,000 people to go look through all of your shit and find a way to make you look bad, like literally that's their whole job. Just find a way to make you look bad. Guarantee you'll look bad within 24 hours on the internet, and everybody's going to know about it. So it's one thing when you're shaming somebody else who has a legion of people attacking them. It's a whole other thing when you can hide in the closet and nobody can attack you because we don't know who you are. And that's the shame. Next one is the insults. And the insults are ad hominem. Ad hominem is a logical fallacy, which is basically when someone disagrees with your point, but instead they attack you as a person. So ad hominem means attacking the person rather than attacking the point. And women do this all the time. And again, I just explained that. But men should not do this. Men should not ever have to stoop to this level. If I disagree with a point that any of you makes here, like when I get into the comments, I'm sure there are going to be some disagreements with me. I'm not going to attack you personally because I disagree with your point or because you disagree with my point. I will address your point. And if your point is garbage, I will beat the shit out of your point, throw it on the ground and stomp it until there is no more life in your point. I will do that. I will beat your point up to a pulp, but I will not attack you personally just because you had the point. And a man should be able to understand that frame and should use it on a consistent basis. The next one is the guilt. Guilting another man. Oh, you're a bad person. This is another form of moralizing. You're a bad person if you support Donald Trump, or you're an idiot if you think Elon Musk is a good person, or Elon Musk is taking everything away from all the people who actually need it just so he can make more money for himself and his billionaire friends. What is that? That is guilt. You're trying to guilt people into not supporting him because allegedly this false frame that you're presenting is what he's doing when it's not what he's actually doing. Different conversation. And then the last one is the need to be right. Again, this is moving the goalposts. Usually when you realize that you are wrong on the subject, just moving the goalposts. I've had people on social media be in that conversation with me and we're disagreeing on a point, and I make a solid point that they cannot refute. And what they end up doing is either they don't respond anymore, or they'll change the subject, or they'll block me so that they don't have to admit that they were wrong. Men should not have to do this. If a woman does it, I understand, because I expect femininity from a woman. If a man does it, I do not respect it. I don't expect femininity from a man. If you have testicles, I don't want feminine energy coming out of you in any way, shape, or form for any reason. So all that being said, folks, let's get into the conversation here. Let's get into the comments. Well, we had the one-way conversation. Now let's have the two-way conversation. Let's get into the comments here. And I'm going to start over on YouTube, a couple comments, then we'll go and get what we got on Instagram. Then we'll come over to folks on TikTok. Moderators on TikTok, I appreciate you. If y'all see a good comment, just highlight it. And let's see, over on YouTube, Snuggles, good morning. O-Dog says, fortune favors the bold. You have to dare to be great. That said, there's some requisite conditions you need in order to stand a chance. I agree with all that wholeheartedly. Matt Villainy, I'm a straight up villain, so no shame here. All right, well, I'm assuming you're a man. I've never heard a woman call herself a villain, so I'm assuming you're a man, Matt Villainy, who's making that comment. Soul Art said, a lot of men are tired of being masculine men. They don't want to do it, SMH. I don't know about that. Soul Art, maybe, that's an interesting comment. Said a lot of men are tired of being masculine men. I don't think a man gets tired of being masculine. I don't get tired of being masculine. I've never heard anybody say that. I think a lot of men are not being masculine because they don't know what being masculine even means. I think a lot of men have never even thought about what it means to be masculine. And another thing that's happening is that a lot of men who are masculine, who are out there, men who are known, like known public figures who are in their masculine, maybe even what some of you would call toxic masculine, many of them get demonized so strongly that the response to them is that a lot of men have been conditioned to believe, and a lot of women are telling them to believe this, is that, okay, being like that guy, because he's toxic masculine, is wrong. So what is right? I guess you got to be the opposite of that, which means a man being more like a woman. And women talk as if they want a man to be more feminine, but then as soon as the man becomes feminine, she doesn't want the man anymore. And a lot of women have this issue in that, all right, I want you to be more nurturing and more caring and spend more time with me and watch Netflix with me and sit on the couch with me and spend time with me all day. Well, those are feminine things to do. A masculine man has shit to do. He has things he wants to accomplish, things he wants to achieve. He wants to go after them with purpose and with vigor, which is the definition of being aggressive. For a man to do masculine things, he cannot sit on the couch and watch Netflix with a woman. I'm not saying you can't ever watch Netflix with a woman. I'm not saying you can't ever, if you want to fucking do dances on TikTok with your wife, go ahead and do it. That's what you want to do. But the masculine frame is not doing that shit. And a lot of women say they want a man who's willing to do that. But as soon as they get a man and he starts doing that, eventually starts looking at him like, hey, you ever going to get off the couch and go do something? Right? Mofo, you wanted me to sit here and sit on the couch with you. I'm doing it. Now you don't like me because I'm not being masculine anymore. So there's a balance that needs to be struck. And the man is responsible for striking this balance. The man is responsible for making sure the woman understands his frame, which is I need to go out and accomplish and achieve and go get dinner and bring home the bacon. And then you cook the bacon up. And then we can spend some time together. But then I got to get off the couch again because I got to go back out and I got to do it again. So that's what's happening. And then you get men who are well known for being in their masculine frame. Let's take someone like Kevin Samuels, who some of you know. He was very much in his masculine frame, and he would explain it to these women very articulately. You get someone like Donald Trump. Again, you may not like Donald Trump, but no one can say the guy's feminine. He is extremely masculine, maybe even to the point that some of you will call toxic masculine, but he is very masculine. And a lot of people do not like Donald Trump. Therefore, to not be like him, if you're being trained to not be like him, what are you going to be? The opposite of him. So you're going to be more feminine. And this is where you get the feminine men. You take someone like Mr. AT, the kickboxer who lived in Romania, who is visiting the United States right now. And a lot of people don't like this guy, but no one can say the guy's feminine. No one can say he's feminine. He is extremely masculine to the point of toxicity, some may say. So what's the counterbalance to a very toxic man is a very feminine man. But I don't want feminine men. I'd rather a whole world of people like this guy. I'm not saying everything that you think he's done or he's been accused of you should do. What I'm saying is his frame, the way that he talks about things, the way that he presents himself, and the way that he gets his point across is extremely masculine. So if men don't want to be that, again, what is your alternative? And that's the issue. And a lot of people look at things in black and white, in binaries, when it's really not that. But most people don't have the intellectual capacity to understand that there are levels in between extremes. All that being said, Soul Art said, I got to watch that podcast. Haven't had the time to listen to it yet. Which one? Which one are you talking about? You talking about the average at best conversation? That one went viral. That's how I first found out about the guy. I didn't know what he looked like, what he sounded like, anything until that. Soul Art said, Kevin Samuels was so inflammatory, LOL. I don't think he was inflammatory, but I understand Soul Art. I mean, you're a female. So oftentimes with women or men who are in their feminine, they will hear something that is objectively true that they simply disagree with or that bothers them on some level. And then they'll say, well, what you said is controversial, or Soul Art, using you as an example here with love, that what you're saying is inflammatory. Nothing Kevin Samuels said was inflammatory. Now, the response was inflammatory. But if he said to that woman, you're average at best, this is after she rated herself as average. All he did was spit it back to her. He said it very plainly, and he didn't try to soften it. He just said it straight to her. He said, you're average at best. Why are you expecting a man who's up here when you are down here? That's all he said to her. That's all he said. That was just logical and objective, but people took it as he's being mean or he's nasty or he's talking down on women. He didn't do any of that. And I listened to a lot of his conversations. He wasn't doing any of that. All he was doing was giving people the objective reality right to their faces that they asked him to give. Not like he was walking up on people on the street and saying, you're average, you're cute, you're ugly. He wasn't doing that. They were coming to him. What did he do wrong? He didn't do anything wrong. That was the whole point. But I understand as a woman, when you hear something like that, you are immediately, your emotions and your ego may be offended. And I understand when women do this. That's why I give a woman a pass on this. But if a man starts doing it, I have a problem with it. So when Kevin Samuels passed away, there was a lot of women on social media saying, I'm glad Kevin Samuels passed away because he was so negative and inflammatory and he was always talking down on women. I understand women saying that because women are in their female frame. I appreciate women in their female frame, even when they're doing shit that annoys me. When a man gets into a female frame, that's when I have a problem. I saw a lot of men saying the same thing that I saw women saying. There are certain things that women say that men shouldn't say. And there are certain things that men say that women shouldn't say. I don't want to see women in the street fist fighting. Even if they have a real problem with each other, I don't want to see it because that's masculine. Fist fighting is masculine. I want to see women fighting. Unless you're a boxer. If you're a boxer, that's okay. But that's also masculine to be boxing as a woman. And I don't want to see men saying, well, this other man was bad because he said things that hurt people's feelings and made people feel bad. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You sound like a female. That's ridiculous. Anyway, rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. Now, here we are at TikTok. And let me go. It's easier when I do it this frame so I can see all the comments. Or more of them. Here we go. Ryan Lee says, standards and rules are pushing toxic masculinity, LOL. I don't know if you're agreeing or disagreeing, but standards and rules are what stave off entropy scientifically. Ryan said, you're failing your son with this mentality. 100% disagree, Ryan. And if you, just so Ryan started this out. So it's good that he said this because I'll set this frame for everybody as we go through the comments. If there's something that I said that you disagree with, just tell me just tell me your counter to what I'm saying. Instead of just saying that I'm wrong or I'm failing or you don't like something I said or you shouldn't have mentioned Donald Trump or I'm sure somebody made one of these comments. Just tell me what your counterpoint is to my point. Just say that. So instead of just saying that you disagree with me, tell me what the disagreement is and your counter if you can fit it all into a comment or two. That's what I would prefer you do. So I don't have to ask everybody this question because I get a lot of comments when people say they disagree, but they don't say what the disagreement is. Just tell me what it is. Tammy at Trucks said, I love that you're out here speaking these hard truths. Me too. Thank you. Joyous Freedom says, absolutely, yes. Men looking for a mom. Yes, Joyous Freedom. This is what happens when men are not raised by men. That's what happens. And that's the reason why, Joyous, I'm trying to look at your profile pic. Looks like you're a female if I'm gauging correctly. This is what happens when men don't raise men. This is the reason why I'm holding men accountable. So when I see women in their masculine, of course, I don't like it when I see women in their masculine. But the reason women are stepping into their masculine because there are no men in their masculine. And women are following men's lead. So feminism, even though many women may see it as women actually taking the lead, the only reason women are taking the lead because men let it go. Men dropped the lead, so women picked it up. If men would pick the lead up again, women will fall right back into their positions where they're supposed to be. And I'm not saying that as a negative thing for women. That is a woman's natural role is in support of a man. But if there's no man, then a woman has to step up. That's just what happens. So Tracy Rose says, young men aren't asking women out anymore either on proper dates. I believe it. I 100% believe that simply because, first of all, Tracy Rose, a lot of men are growing up on the internet where their interactions with women are sending DMs and liking pictures. They're not actually walking up to a woman and having a real face-to-face conversation. And also because the males in their lives are not teaching them this is how you talk to a woman. This is how you court a woman. And your mom needs to teach you this too. Because if you're a man, your mom needs to tell you, here's how you approach a woman respectfully. And if you want to talk to her or you're interested in her, then you ask her out and then you go pick her up and you do this and you do that and you go shake her hands with her dad and your dad teaches you part of it and your mom teaches you part of it. This is the reason why we need 2-parent households, because there are things that every man and woman, young man, young woman needs to learn from their mom and things they need to learn from their dad. And when one of them is missing, you're going to be missing pieces. You're like a puzzle missing a piece. And then you go out into the world looking for the piece that you didn't have. This is how you get women on OnlyFans. If you didn't have a male figure in your life, and you go out into the world looking for any man to give you attention, and OnlyFans provides it, or the P word provides it, or you go to college and you're known for getting around. Why? Because there was no man who gave you proper attention. So as soon as a man gives you any attention, you're going to give him everything you got. And let's just leave it at that for now. Ryan Lee said, not all females want a super masculine man. Straw man comment. I never said they did. Carol Z said, boy, do I know that. A man that can't make a decision is the worst. Generally, that's what I've heard from women. Number one complaint that women have of men who are not masculine enough is that they simply are indecisive. Napoleon Hill, 31 major causes of failure in the book Think and Grow Rich, also in his book, The Law of Success. Number one cause of failure is indecision. And that book was written for men. He wrote that book in the 1920s. And in the 1920s, those of you who don't know, most of the workforce were men. Women did not, for the most part, women did not work at that time. So Think and Grow Rich was all about men. And one of the things he said that causes men to fail is a lack of ability to make decisions. And women really do not like that. It's ingrained in women that they want to follow a man, but the man, in order for somebody to follow you, got to lead. And leading means you go first, which means when there's a decision to be made, you make it. And then you tell everybody the decision. You don't sell people. You can sell them on the decision, but you tell them the decision and everyone follows your lead. There's no such thing as a group decision. Even if two people are the group, two people can't make a decision. One person makes a decision, and then the other person follows. Willie Lump said, now you lost it. What I get wrong? Joya said, polarity is necessary. Absolutely. 100%. Courtney, good morning again. Carrie K, you put a laughing emoji. I don't know if you're laughing with me or at me. Mindy Smith said, you are so right. Thank you. Deborah said, I never said anything like that. Leaving a man to be a man. 61 single, no proposals ever. All right. Do you think that's by choice, Deborah? Is it something that you did? Why do you think that is? I don't know if you're saying that is a good thing or a bad thing. Bouncer 803 said, a masculine man can't step into femininity is oxymoronic. Okay, I agree with that. Directionally, I agree with what you're saying. Deborah said, man is demasculated in life. Yeah, many men are demasculated. D, I appreciate that. Oh, hand hearts. Thank you. Carla, thank you for pushing people for the likes. Can we get to, we're at 32K right now, folks. Can we get let's try to get to 40 first, and then we'll get to 50. Let's crawl before we walk. But Carla, I see what you're doing there. Let's see if we can get to 40. Can we get to 40,000 likes on TikTok, please? Can y'all just like the live? I think all you gotta do is tap a button and like the live. Can we like the live? Let's see. Squirrel T, appreciate you, sir. Thanks, Squirrel. Sorry if I identify any of you as a man or a woman. I can't see your profile pictures that well. They're very small, so I'm trying to guess when I'm talking to a man or a woman. So if I identify you as a woman, but you're a man, no disrespect. Willie said, you sound outside of your mind with that masculine, feminine energy stuff when you make this up. How? What did I get wrong? Tell me what you disagree with, Willie. I just want to know your disagreement. Beauty by Dainty Nelly said, that's immature. Not all women do that. Well, Beauty by Dainty, can we have an adult conversation here? Of course, I'm not saying every example I give applies to every single woman or every single man. I think you understand that. Let's not dumb down the conversation. Mike said, how do you deal with it, though? Deal with what? What's the it? Solid Chica said, you should expect that of both genders. What's the that you're referring to? Tammy, I appreciate it. Max B, good morning. Mike said, how do you deal with women being women if it bothers you? What part of women being women? There's a lot of things that go into a woman being a woman. Tashia, thank you for that lightning bolt. Women being women can mean a whole lot of things. What are you talking about? And does it bother me? Well, there are a lot of things that women do that bother me, but it doesn't mean that I would decide the alternative of being with a man. It's a lot of things that women do. Sometimes I have when you have young children and a woman is spending most of the time with the kids because the man is out working, such as right now what I'm doing. Sometimes a woman can come to you as a man and bitch and complain about all the problems she's dealing with and trying to take care of the house and make food and wash the dishes and keep the house clean and dealing with these damn kids who are a pain in the ass. That's complaining. Now, I told you that one of the things that annoys me is when people complain, but that kind of complaints, even though generally I'm annoyed by it, I accept it from a woman because I understand her frame. So I can be annoyed by something, but that doesn't mean, again, I'm going to tell her don't do it because then she can't be in her space. She can't be in her feminine. And part of being feminine is sometimes you're going to do something that can annoy someone who's in their masculine. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it because it's just a trade-off of life. There are no perfect scenarios, folks. There are only trade-offs. One of the trade-offs of me being in masculine, if I'm out with my wife or I'm out with a woman, period, or you're a man, you're out with a woman, and another man approaches your woman or does or says something he's not supposed to do, you may step up and challenge that man. And the woman who's with you might say you're taking it a little bit too far and you're kind of getting into your toxic masculine, that she may be annoyed by it, but it doesn't mean she's going to say, well, hey, I'm not dating men anymore because I don't like when men do that. She accepts the fact that you might do that. That's one of the trade-offs of you being a man. It's just how it goes. I heard, what's the woman's name? She passed away. She used to be a comedian. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers said this. She said, and she was doing a comedy special, and she said, women out there, you might as well marry you a rich man because even if they had, whether they're rich or poor, they all leave their underwear on the floor. All right, that's, if y'all can understand that metaphor, and there was a perfect point. Said they all leave their underwear on the floor, whether they're rich or they're broke. So you might as well get a rich guy because you're going to have to deal with the same shit from a rich guy that you had to deal with a poor guy. Why? Because a man is still a man. It's the same thing when it comes to men, is that whether you date a woman who you love or a woman who you hate or a woman who's beautiful or a woman who's ugly, either way, there's going to come a time they want to bitch, moan, and complain about their life situation, and they expect you to sit there and listen. And you have to. That's part of the game. That's part of the trade-off of dealing with women, is that sometimes they're going to complain and you have to accept it. And sometimes a man is going to get a little bit too aggressive and a woman has to accept that. Not aggressive with you, but aggressive, period. Willie said, people have energy, not genders. Willie, did I ever say that they didn't? What are you arguing against? Nam Lit Skitch. I don't know how to say your name. Nam Lit Skitch 74. It's interesting spelling that you got there. So you have a very refreshing and honest view on men and women. This is how I feel as a Gen X woman. Well, I appreciate that. I'm a Gen X man, so that's probably why we're aligned. Live Free said, just be respectful, period. Yes, well, the challenge of being respectful is that different people have different definitions of what respectful means. Luis said, is also called, I'm an expert on a subject because I read an article on XYZ. Well, depending on the subject, maybe that's enough. Legally speaking, Luis, a person can be a subject matter expert just because they know more than the people in the room. So if you're in a certain room and you know more than everybody in that room on the subject, then in that room, you are the expert. You may not be an expert, but you are the expert in that room. Mindy said, I'm accountable. I feel on my social media, I will back it up as I don't you to my table. Mindy, I'm not quite sure what you were saying there. Liv said, I never want to be disrespectful to anyone. Generally live free, neither do I, but there are times where I will be disrespectful to a person on purpose if I feel like I need to. So you got to be careful with that never word because there are exceptions. Let's say live free. I don't know if you're a man or a woman. Let's say you're a man and you're out with your woman and the man disrespects your woman to your face. Would you be disrespectful back to the man? I would. So again, be careful with that word never. There are exceptions to damn near everything. Louise said, I just don't understand why women can't be reasonable or why people can't be reasonable, respectful, and civil. Well, most people are, Louise. If you really think about it, most people are all of those things. It's just the exceptions, we tend to notice them more because they stand out. But most people are all of those things you don't notice. I was at the gym this morning. There was 100 other people in the gym. Everybody was reasonable, respectful, and civil. But see, it deletes out of my mind because nothing interesting happens, so I forget about it. So then if I go out and I meet one guy who's a jerk, now I'm thinking, oh, everybody's a jerk. It was one guy. What about the 100 people in the gym who nobody did anything wrong? So in our minds, we just tend to emphasize the outliers. Lauren Fenton Fache said, do you see what happened to Athena? People didn't like what she said. They showed up to her house. Who's Athena? Who are you talking about? I don't know who Athena is. Solid said, what about toxic masculinity? I did a whole live on that maybe 3 weeks ago. Solid Chico. Look it up on my YouTube channel. Links in my profile. Hope said, emotions in every conversation. It's kind of a fragment. Don't know what you're talking about. Hope said, you can't be emotional and logical. You can if you learn how to weave them together. You can weave them together. You can weave emotion into a logical conversation, but it's a skill. That's what I'd say. It's not natural for most people, but it is a skill. Radiant said, bitch stands for being in total control, honey. I've never heard that one before. Bitch, I was about to call you bitch. Radiant love. I'm assuming you're a female because I've never heard a man say that, and I would not expect that to come from a man. So I'm assuming you're a woman to have even figured that one out or heard it wherever you got it from. I've never heard that before. Being in total control, honey. Because men don't usually use the word honey when talking to people. Cucifer said, most men cannot do that. Cannot do what? What was I talking about? Radiant said, people just need to grow through their pains of life. That I agree with. Cucifer said, most men get ego involved. Yes, some men get their ego involved faster than others. And those are the men we usually call toxic. But there is a time for toxicity. And as a man, you got to be able to read the room. You got to know who you're dealing with when you're dealing with other men, because some men are quicker to go there than other men. And you be wise to not make a mistake in thinking one man is one way when he's actually another way. Lynn Perfect says, stay single, ladies. It's spicy out there. I don't know about that one, man. I don't know if that's good advice, Lynn. Ty the Roofer said, brother only speaks facts. Thank you. Jack said, men need to be humble or God will humble you. Directionally, I agree with you. It depends on what you mean by humble. People throw that word around. In my opinion, people throw that word around a little bit too loosely. And people have different definitions of what that means. Cucifer said, pride gets involved, especially when women around. Certain types of men, that is correct. Certain types of men do get their pride involved when they believe women are observing. And there's a time for that and certain reasons. Courtney said, YouTube or Instagram because YouTube freezes sometimes. Yeah, today YouTube seems to be doing well. So luckily today we got a clean stream on YouTube. I don't know what is different, but for whatever reason, YouTube has been streaming cleanly the whole time. And let me not speak too soon. Carlos said, I couldn't get the YouTube to play. Yeah, YouTube was janky yesterday. I uploaded the recording though. So the recording is on YouTube from yesterday. Today, hopefully we can just take this stream and it'll be up immediately. Crossing our fingers for now. Renata said, how do I help my 6-year-old with getting bullied in school? Your 6-year-old, is that a male or a female? I would first talk to the school and see what resources they have for the situation. And if the 6-year-old is a male, is his father around or accessible? That'd be the next question. If you're talking about a male. And the next one is figuring out what do you mean? What type of bullying are you talking? I'm not saying this with you specifically, Renata, but I know the definition of bullying has been greatly expanded over the last 30 years. What we used to call bullying back in the day meant actual bullying. Nowadays, bullying could include 3 people said something about you on Facebook, and you found out. Now they're calling that bullying. I'm not saying you're wrong, but the definition of the term has greatly been expanded. So I need to know what you're talking about. Christine said, F staying single, married 23 years, wouldn't change a day of it. Don't mind some spice, bland is boring. Okay, interesting. Interesting enough. I think I'm guessing your husband appreciates that. You were married for 23 years. Christopher said, the fact that he said that is diabolical. Which part? Oh, that conversation with the black man who didn't like the facts that I presented to him straight from the government. 0126, I think I already answered that. Faisa said, that I was whitewashed. No, he didn't say that. Yeah, Baby Rose basically said the numbers may be manipulated. He said he didn't believe it. The issue with violent crimes, especially when it comes to people losing their lives, that you cannot make up a dead body. Only way you get someone losing their life statistic is somebody has to actually be dead. It has to be a dead body on the ground. So you can't make that up. Now you can make up, let's say, a domestic violence. You can make up somebody, stealing money. You can't make up a dead body. So somebody did it. So who did it? D Corb said, yes, I did used to make basketball videos. I talked about that earlier. All right. Rip 47 said, you had me in the first half. First half of what? Christopher said, I can't stand when men do that. Yes. QB said, why would you call it femininity? Not all women are like that. I've already addressed that. Of course, nothing I'm saying applies to every single man or every single woman. All of you should generally get that point. Senior Gray said, I don't know if that's toxic femininity as much as it's just ignorance. Which part? Which point you talking about? Rip said, just because you wear a suit and you can talk fast doesn't make you smart. Every day somebody makes a comment like this. So first of all, Rip 47, I agree with you. Wearing a suit and talking fast does not make you smart. I agree with you. What makes me smart is that I do know what I'm talking about. And I've been doing these kind of lives every day for the last 7 months. And the marketplace, not me, not you, not my personal opinion, the marketplace has responded resoundingly and said that they like what I'm talking about. Now, whether you believe I'm smart or not is your choice. But the marketplace has responded. And I just told you, the business that we're in is a performance and a results-based business. The results of what I've done doing these live streams, the marketplace has spoken. So that's my response to you. Now, if you think I'm smart, that's your personal opinion. So you could say no, I can say yes. Who's right? Who's wrong? The answer is, doesn't matter. Results-based business, not opinion-based business. Prolet says, do you date white women? Do I? And have I? Yes. I've dated women from every background you can name: Black, Latin, Asian, white. And when I say white, I make distinctions between white and European. Some of you neighborhood Negroes have never been anywhere in your life. You just look at any pale-skinned person and call them white. I do not. Because the only thing that a woman from, what's the country I can name? Italy. I think I can say Italy on here. A woman from Italy and a woman from Iowa, they both have the same skin tone. They have nothing else in common. Any of you who has any life experience understands this, especially you men. A woman from Italy and a woman from Iowa have nothing in common except skin tone. And they could even look the same, but there's nothing else in common once you actually start talking to them. So answering the question, European, Asian, Australian, African, actual Africa, not African-American people claiming Africa, never even been there. Black people in America, Latin, anything south of the United States. So South American, or let's just say Latin. So yes, to answer your question, Proet, not just white, but every other flavor that there is. Prolet said, who is my audience? The people who are watching this right now. Look through the comments. You can see them. What do you mean, who's my audience? Crying Gosling said, weak host can't get women to submit. That is correct. Totally, Garrett. Appreciate you. Good to see you here. Jill T says, so MAGA men are all toxic feminists. They are just ignorant and have no critical thinking. Well, Jill, you can't apply that to every single man who supports MAGA. You're talking about tens of millions of people. So maybe some who you've come across, maybe, possibly. I'm sure there are some. You get that many people, you're going to get a mix of pretty much everything if you go through every person in detail, Jill. But given your frame here and the way that you frame this comment, Jill, I'm assuming that you are not a fan of MAGA, which is fine. And because you have outed yourself as not a fan of MAGA, then I had to take your comment with a grain of salt, because you may just be blanket trashing anything that has anything to do with MAGA because you so much don't like it. So you got to be careful how you frame things, because you're kind of exposing your bias. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, but it also means that people may not necessarily go with what you say because you've already exposed that you're leaning heavily in one direction. Thank you, Carla, for enticing people to like the live. We're at 41,000, folks. Can we get to 50, please? Tish Tansil said, I see so many male students who believe they will play pro sports that they don't study. Yes, it's very prevalent in the Black community. And Tish, looks like you're Black. I'm pretty sure you're talking about Black students. I don't see white kids or Latin kids having this issue, but in the Black community, this is a huge thing. And it is a problem. It is a problem because a lot of young men think that if they just make it as an athlete, nothing else will matter. And in some cases, that's the truth. That is true. You make it in the NFL or the NBA, you can make enough money that theoretically you don't need to have any other skills. In reality, that's not the case, because a lot of athletes, first of all, their lifestyles may cost so much that when you stop playing, if you don't downgrade your lifestyle commensurate with the money no longer coming in, you cannot sustain that lifestyle. Secondly, if you're taking care of other people, you can't keep taking care of them when the money's not coming in anymore. Third, not every athlete goes and makes $500 million in their careers like you see on TV. Some athletes might play, but you might only make $2 million in the lifetime of your career. So now your career's over. You made $2 million. Let's say half of that went to taxes. You got $1 million. You cannot live from age 35 to age 65 on $1 million. It's not enough money. So a lot of young men don't understand that. So Tish, you're 100% correct. This has always been an issue in the Black community. But as we can see more of these athletes and entertainers, it's becoming more pernicious, unfortunately. And I was lucky enough to understand that sports ends. Sports careers, most athletes are done playing a professional sport by age 30, not 40. So some of y'all watching TV, you see Tom Brady or LeBron or Kobe, they play to their 40 something. Most athletes do not play that long. Most athletes' careers are over before they turn 30. Yes, 30. Average NFL career is 3.5 years. NBA is 4.5. Baseball is about 5.5. Hockey is about 4.5. So if you start playing when you get out of college, let's say you're 22 or 23, many athletes are done before they turn 25, let alone 30, let alone 40. So these are things that young men need to hear, but a lot of times they don't want to hear it because they're like, well, hey, I might make it. And then if a woman tells them that, they don't believe it because they think you don't know. And then if a man tells them that, well, they say, well, did you play? And then they basically don't want to listen to you if you didn't play at a certain level. And then if a man who did play at that level says it, again, he has to give the grain of salt that somebody might make it. Somebody might make it. So really, the only person that could really tell them this is either a man who's always been in their life, who has their ear, or a man who has the status that they aspire to. Those are only men that can really get through to some of these men, especially by the time they get to Tish. I'm assuming, what age bracket are we talking here, Tish? Are we talking high schoolers? Tish said Kobe had the DNA from an athletic dad too. Yes, and his dad also had his ear. He was raised by two parents. That's also another thing we got to keep in mind. Angelica, good to see you too. Crying Gosselin said, there's a reason why bro isn't balling anymore and giving bad dating advice. So you talking about me? What are you talking about? I stopped playing ball like 10 years ago, and I'm not giving. What dating advice did I give? I don't think I gave any. Circa 70 said, I'm still a moderator on his channel. Oh, Kevin Samuels? Yeah, shout out to Kevin Samuels. Ashley said, is it intentional, the guilting? No, Ashley, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just natural instinct. That's what I think it is. I think it's a natural instinct when a female is in her toxic energy that she's going to guilt, as it's just a natural response. Again, when I was arguing with that girl who was my sales coworker, and we were arguing over the commission of a sale, and she started crying, I don't think she did that. I don't think she was thinking, I'm going to go into the meeting and cry. I think when she realized that I was kind of winning the argument, she cried as a natural response. I don't think it was calculated. Christine said, I personally feel victimized. I don't know what I was talking about at this point, but I see a bunch of you with the crying face. I don't know what I said, but glad you were entertained by it. Dog Mom said, not all women do that, but I agree, some do. Yes, not all women do it. Of course, nothing I'm saying applies to every single man or every single woman. Bev said, men do the sign language also, or is that just the feminine ones? I would say it's when men are in their feminine. So let me be very clear. A woman can be in her toxic femininity for 1 minute, but then an hour later, she's back into her normal femininity. A man can go into toxic femininity and still be a masculine man as a whole, but he may go into toxic energy for 5 minutes based on the subject matter at hand, but then he can get back into his masculine frame in a moment. He can say, a man can be in a situation where he's dealing with other men and he's kind of acting like a bitch and they're calling him out for doing so. And then after he calms down, he can come back to the men in the group and say, all right, I'm sorry, I was acting like a bitch. Thank you for calling me out on that, and get back to his masculine frame. So it can be a temporary thing. You can shift from one energy to another from time to time based on what's going on. So that's the situation. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So let's see what we got. Nikki B said, I want an alpha man. All right, great. So, Nikki, what do you mean by alpha man? I'm interested for all the women in here to tell me, give me the traits of an alpha man. When you say an alpha man, what do you mean? So, Nikki brought this up. This is a good conversation. As a matter of fact, while y'all leave that comment, let me run to the restroom. Everybody hold on. I'm going to the restroom. It's going to take me 90 seconds. I'll be right back. Then I'm going to take everybody else's comment. 90 seconds, restroom break. Be right back. Everybody stay here. Don't go anywhere. All right, I'm back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. So I was asking the question. I didn't get to the bottom of the comments yet. So y'all leaving those comments. I'll get to them in a minute. I'm just scrolling through and reading everybody's comments here. But Nikki says she wants an alpha man. So it's an interesting conversation to get into there. Tashia Bennett, good to see you again. Stacey Morrison said, men don't need to be the head of the home, provide and protect for your family. That doesn't mean do everything, but be the man. Fair enough, Stacey. That's fair enough. What I would say is that a man in his full essence of masculinity. Here's my response to your comment. A man in his full essence of masculinity wants to be the head of the home. He wants to be the full provider. He wants to be the protector. And just those three things. Let me think about that a little bit more, Stacey. I would say any man in his masculine wants to do all three. I don't think that's a menu. That's not like a buffet where you pick the ones you want. I think that's all three. A man wants to, because a man who's providing and protecting is the head of the home. So that's not even, the head of the home just comes naturally. If you're providing for your family, everybody under that roof, and you're the protector of the family, then you naturally are the leader. I mean, what else is there to do? You become the head of the home just by doing those things. And any man who's not the protector of the family, who's going to be the protector? The woman? So if we really were to dive into this one, Stacey, what woman wants to be in a home where she's the protector of the family and there's a man there? That doesn't quite add up. If there's a man in the house, he's the protector, period. If there's a noise at night, as a matter of fact, I was just listening to this conversation on this guy with the Diary of a CEO. I don't know his name, the host, but he was interviewing this woman who's an attachment expert for early child care or early child raising, not child care, child raising with a parent. And she said that they've done studies on this, that if a child starts crying in the middle of the night, the man will sleep through the child crying, but the mom always wakes up. And on the flip side, If there's a noise outside of the house in the middle of the night, the woman will sleep through that, but the man wakes up. That's the natural wiring of men and women. The woman is naturally the nurturer and the man is naturally the protector. So I don't see any situation where there's a man and a woman in the house and the man's not the protector. That doesn't even add up. I only see how a man could live in the house and not be the protector. Now, as far as being the provider, there are some families, of course, where both people work and maybe the woman makes more money than the man. But I would say a man in his full masculine essence wants to be the head of the home. Even if he's not, he wants to be. So he may not admit it. I think many men would admit it, but maybe they don't want to if they get to the point where maybe they can't or they don't think it's possible. Audio Jax said, lost me at Trump. And I guess he said he was leaving. Okay, bye. So Forever Dream said, you just said, damn, I lost my spot. Where was I? I'm trying to get back to where I was so I can catch everybody's comment. Where was I? All right, so I'm not that far down. Fever Dream said, you just said you'd rather have every man act the same. No, I didn't say that. Straw man comment. JJ Bro said, wait, you don't like binary, but vote against non-binary clowning. What are you talking about voting? I didn't say anything about voting. JJ Bro, sounds like you're starting to troll my comments. Y'all know what happens when you troll my comments. Fever said, diversity within men is better than every man being toxic. That's a false binary, Fever Dream. There is more than two options for how men behave. And diversity depends on what type of diversity you're talking. The diversity as a general idea, I'm fine with it, but it depends on what type of diversity and then how will we implement it. So it depends on what you mean by that. I need more detail. Fever said, no one should be fighting in the street. It depends on the situation. I would not say no one. There are times to fight in the street. Depends on what's happening. Fever said, who cares? Who gives a shit if a man sounds like a female? I do. That's the reason why I did this whole conversation about toxic femininity. I care. So D said, do you think that we as Black people will argue to get our land back to get researchers to find it? D, I have no idea what that means. I need you to write in a grammatically correct sentence. I don't understand what you just said. Erica Farrell said, I agree with you 100%. Thank you. Fever said, more men are raising children these days than 50 years ago. So what are you talking about? I didn't say that. I don't know if this statistic is true, what you said, but even if it is, what does that have to do with anything that I said? Fever Dream, you're starting to sound like you're trolling my comments. Now, you know what happens. D said, Dr. Umar has valid points on economics. I wish you both would get together to get Black communities. Dr. Umar, I think Dr. Umar does have some valid points. And when I hear Dr. Umar talk, I believe about 50% of what he says is valid. And the other 50% is somewhat ridiculous. And Dr. Umar is, of course, he's hyperbolic because he has to sell his stuff. I also think Dr. Umar is a racist. Doesn't necessarily make him a bad guy, but I do believe Dr. Umar to be racist. Some of the things that he says are they're just racist things. Doesn't mean that, again, I will still listen to a conversation of his because I believe he's an entertaining guy. Now, as far as us having a conversation to get Black communities, I don't know. What is Dr. Umar? I know my lane in terms of what I do. What's Dr. Umar doing for a Black community? I think some of the things that he says is he just has a different frame. He's talking about things like, you heard what he talks about. They're not similar to the things that I'm talking about. So I don't know how we would complement each other. Let's just put it that way. And I would also tell him that he's a racist. So I don't know how well that conversation would go. Not that I'm not even mad at him. I don't even dislike him. But if you ask me, he's a racist. Tommy said, being average is not bad per se. After all, most people are average. This is statistics. Well, Tommy, depends on what you consider to be bad or good. That's fine if that's how you feel. As a person who works in a high performance space, I work with people who want to be super high performers, who want to join the top 2% of what they do. I told you my background is as a pro athlete. Those are top 2% performers. These are the kind of people who I work with. So for them, type people who I work with on a professional level, being average is bad. Being average is like losing for them. Now, the person who is okay being average, then being average is exactly what you wanted. So more power to those people. That's my cue. Appreciate you. Good to see you here. Tashia said, yeah, say that for the people in the back. I don't know what it was that I said, but I see D agreed with that. That's my cue. Agreed with that. Fever said, that's not true. Men are walking up to women. Not as much. No, men are not approaching women nearly as much because we have smartphones. So you don't have to approach a woman these days the way that you had to back in the day. Fever Dream, are you a male or a female? And how old are you? I mean, if you're going to be engaging here and offering your observations, let's get clear on who you are. Are you a man or a woman? And what's your age bracket? And anybody who's over the age of 40 knows that back in the day, if you wanted to talk to a girl, or you were a girl and a boy wanted to talk to you, he had to actually walk up to you and speak to you in real life. Nowadays, of course, you can still do that, but we have the option now where a man can approach her through the internet, and you may not, by the time you meet the girl in person for the first time, you've already had a full-on conversation. That wasn't possible in 1997. You had to actually go and talk to her in real life. Tasha said, taught my son that. Yes, correct. D said, a lot of women play games. That is true. Yes. Dear, we said, I don't know any women that want a feminine man. Well, women will say that they want things in a man that are feminine. But then if the man is in that feminine all the time, then the woman is no longer interested because the man is not showing any masculinity. So yes, you're correct that most women don't want a feminine man. I would say as a general directional point, yes, that is true. At the same time, women do say they want men to do feminine things, but they can't do them all the time. And a lot of women won't say, well, hey, watch Netflix with me and sit and cuddle with me on the couch. But after about an hour or two, leave me alone and go do some work and go make some money. See, the woman won't say the second part. She'll say the part that she wants. She won't tell you about the part that she has to deal with as a trade-off. The man has to know that innately, and he has to be willing to draw a line with the woman. Like, listen, girlfriend, wife, we'll sit here and watch one episode of Netflix, not the whole series. And then I got to go do some man things, which ain't sitting here on the couch and eating ice cream with you. I got to do some man stuff, which does not involve you. You stay here with the kids. I'm going to go out and do man things. And see, the woman wants a man to go out and do man things, but she's never going to tell a man, go out and do man things. The man has to decide to do that, and he has to let the woman know this is what's happening. That's taking the lead. That's what taking the lead is. So a man has to be willing to be willing to meet a woman halfway, so to speak, on the things that she wants. But you also have to be willing to tell the woman, look, I'm not going to keep doing this, and cut her off at a certain point and go back and do what you need to do. And no woman's going to tell you to do that. That's the point. That's the reason why men need to be raised by men, because a man will tell a man, this is how it goes. But if you don't have a man around you and no man ever tells you that, then how would you know what to do? You won't know how to do either one. Give the woman what she needs or to do what you need to do, because you weren't taught properly. Nikki said a man needs to take charge at times. Well, Nikki, you said you want an alpha man, right? So I think you want him to take charge all the time. When would you not want an alpha man to take charge? If he's actually an alpha man, he's taking charge all the time. D got the #1 gifter badge. Congrats, D. Maya Burton, Grand Rising. Good morning to you. D, thank you. Selling Georgia. Oh, thank you for following me. Carla, thank you for the lightning bolt. We're at 43,000 likes, folks. Can we get to 50, please? Can we get to 50,000 likes here today? Everybody just like the live. I don't even know how you do it because I can't see it, but can you just like the live? Tommy said, I am bagging what you are raking. I never heard that analogy, but I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. What are the steps? Warzola said, what are the steps to becoming more masculine? Is it a change of mindset? Ladies, can you answer the question? So we already asked the question what we want in a alpha male. I didn't get to that comment yet. I'm scrolling right now to get to it. But Warzola asked, what are the steps to becoming more masculine? I want the women, the heterosexual women in this room to answer that question. If you were to name the traits of a masculine man, what are they? What are the traits of a masculine man? Maya, the subject here today is toxic femininity, and it's not really about women, really is about men acting like females. Nikki says, sometimes we have to give each other a reality check. That's very true. Tasha said, Joan Rivers. Yes. D said, love your rebuttal. Thank you. Angelica said, I am also Gen X too, 52 years old. Maybe that's why I can relate. Shout out to the Gen Xers. Stacey said, do not run for Congress. Trump is toxic and so are his minions. I have no plans on running for Congress. That ain't happening. Mike Claps, good morning. D said, a lot of people on the internet to get someone to heal them when they really, I think, need to read some books. Well, good luck getting people to get off the internet and read a book. If you figure out how to do that, I'll be interested to hear how you did it. Nikki said, luckily, we haven't had issues. All right. Carla says, nowadays, people call you getting your feelings hurt bullying. Yes, that's why I was asking, what exactly do you mean by bullying? We've expanded that definition very much. Back in the days, bullying meant like some extreme things. Nowadays, bullying could be somebody just not being liked. But that's what I was asking. Nikki said, you are very smart. I love your fast talking. I understand you perfectly. Well, anybody who is a native English speaker, you can understand me when I'm talking fast. So D said he learned too slow is because he didn't have education. Who you talking about? Dr. JH3, good morning. Nikki said one shaves and one doesn't. What are y'all referring to? I'm getting these comments out of context. Alex said Latin is a very broad brush. You can be white, Latin, and European at the same time. Okay, fair enough, Alex. What I was answering was I have dated people from all different backgrounds, and some of them who are mixed, as you just explained. I'm painting with a broad brush on purpose, Alex. When I say Latin, I just said everything south of the United States. So that's all of South America, that's Central America, that's Mexico. I'm painting all of them with a broad brush to say I have had experience in these places. That's my point. Joey said, give me an example of something good MAGA stands for. It's not the topic here today, but I'll answer your one question, Joey, but no further questions on this subject. Is MAGA stands for America First. So there's a good one. Nikki said, I send my teen son your post. He plays baseball and football. All right, well, hello to your son. Tell him I said hi. Joey, you asking questions that have nothing to do with the topic. They're not even bad questions, but they're not on the topic, so they're not going to be addressed. Carla Indiana said, what about Bronny James? Is he really good enough to be in the NBA? That's on my list. It's coming up. So tomorrow we're going to talk about black on black crime, if it's a real thing or not. And on Monday, I'm planning on talking about LeBron James and his son and the whole situation. It's not really going to be about, is he good enough to be in the NBA? We already know the answer to that question. The answer is no, he's not. But we're going to talk about LeBron James because LeBron James is the one who made this happen. His son didn't do it. LeBron did it. Dad did it. Some guy said, how do you get into Napoleon Hill? Well, somebody mentioned his name years ago, probably 20-ish years ago. I just remembered his name, then I went and got the book and read it. Simple as that. And I liked it, and then I went and found more of his stuff. Napoleon Hill actually has lectures that y'all can find on YouTube for free. Any of y'all didn't know. Napoleon Hill wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich. How many of you have not read that book? If you have not read the book, Think and Grow Rich, put the word not, N-O-T, in the chat. If you have not read the book, Think and Grow Rich. Carla said, okay, intelligent, principled. So we get into terms of the descriptions of what people want from an quote-unquote alpha male. Joey said the term alpha male has been co-opted, lost its true meaning for the new pop generation. That's probably true. Carla said respectful. Nikki said a man to make decisions at times, be the enforcer with kids at times if I'm hollering at them. Okay, I agree with that. I would say make decisions almost all the time. Nikki, what do you think? I don't think it's 50-50. If the man is an alpha, it's not 50-50. If a man is an alpha male, I'm assuming his decision making is like 95-5 with whatever woman he's with. And they aren't listening, and the kids aren't listening, step up and enforce. Yes. Okay. I would say that to just be a masculine man. Joey said, everybody talks about what I want, but few put in the work. Generally, that is also true. Trustworthy is another one. I think that was Carla who said that. Where are we in the comments? Marky Man said, you are so awesome. The 2 hours flew by. That's how it should feel. If you're doing something that is, or consuming something that you enjoy, you shouldn't even notice the time going by. So I appreciate that. Monica Dennison said, alpha man to me is a man that is secure in who he is, soft and gentle, but strong and protective. I like that description. Yes. Nikki said, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but respect what I do here as well. Absolutely. Stay-at-home mom is a full-time job, for those of you who don't know. And I know a lot of people, especially, well, either men who don't have a stay-at-home mom as a wife, or even sometimes women who are full-time working professionals. People look down on the stay-at-home mom as if she's kind of not doing anything. Like somebody asks a stay-at-home mom, what do you do? And if a woman says I'm a stay-at-home mom or I'm a homemaker, people look at that as kind of like a step down from actually having a career and a job. But a stay-at-home mom is actually more work than having a career and a job. Because when you have a career and a job, at least you get to clock out and not think about work till the next day. When you're a stay-at-home mom, you're on the whole time. Because if you have kids, especially when they're super young, you're on all day. It's a 24-hour job. There is no off time. Only off time is if somebody, a babysitter or daycare or dad or an older kid or a family member comes and takes the kid, then you get a little bit of a break. But if the kid is around, you are on 24 hours a day. So stay-at-home mom is a full-time job. The only thing is, there's no salary. So it seems like it's not actual work, but it is actual work. It's a lot of work, as a matter of fact. And I'm not even a female. Josh said, so are you fighting toxic femininity with toxic masculinity? No, I wouldn't say that. I would say toxic femininity in a man. When I say toxic femininity, I'm talking about in men. I'm not really talking about women here today. The frame makes people think I'm talking about women, but I'm really not. I'm talking about men acting like women. And I don't think I'm a toxic masculine man. I wouldn't have all these women continually listen to what I'm saying if I was. Carlos said, if a man woke me up and said there's noise downstairs, go see what it is, I would lose respect. Yes, exactly. And it's not even a man's natural instinct. So most men wouldn't do that. If there's a noise outside, I hear it. If my child cries in the middle of the night, I may register it, but I'm not waking up and I'm not going to do anything because I know mom's taking care of that. But if I hear a noise at the door, I'm getting up. So let's see. Josh said, y'all don't hear when they are stroking what you want to hear. I don't know what you're referring to here. Marky said, if the woman makes more money, they tend to cop an attitude. It depends on the situation. It depends on who the woman is and the relationship. If it was already like that from the beginning and they came together anyway, then usually I find it's usually cool. Now, if the situation shifts over time, then things can get kind of tricky. But it depends. It also depends on the people. Nikki said, I will say it. Get up and do something. Same for both of us. All right, fair enough. Bev, being grateful, said, yes, let a man be a man and a woman a woman. Yes, the thing is we need to define what that means. That's what we're talking about here today. DK, the Ruck Tibbs. Can you please break down what you said about time management? When I didn't say anything about time management today. D Ruck Tibbs, but you should go to my YouTube channel where I got plenty of stuff on time management. Carla said, I tell my husband it's his castle, but it's my house. Let me do what I do to make this house a home. I like that. I never heard that metaphor, but it's perfect. That is a perfect metaphor. It's your castle, but it's my house. And let me do what I do to make this house a home. That is what you need a woman for. See, a man doesn't know how to make a house a home. When my wife puts stuff in the house like little accents and shelves and curtains, and I'm like, if you would have give me 100 years to figure out the idea to even do that, I never would have even thought of it. I would have left it exactly as it came. Like, this is cool. We can close the window, we can close the blinds, but all the little touches and stuff, you need a woman for that. It's a female instinct to figure that stuff out. These are things that I see, things that women do to homes, and I'm like, never would have came up with that by myself. So I like that. It's your castle, but it's my house. For a woman to say. Jennifer said, make decisions, lead the house, be a good provider and protector, etc. Gen X. Yeah, so it seems like Gen X tends to agree with this. We got any women in here under the age of 30 who want to tell us how you see a masculine man or an alpha male? We got any women under 30 who want to answer this question? Just put under 30 and tell us how you see it, because I'm seeing Gen Xers are saying this. So I'm assuming Gen Xers. What age bracket are we talking Gen X? So we're talking like anywhere from like between like 40 and 55, I'm guessing. Maybe 35 and up. But any woman under 30, I'm interested to see what you all think of this. Duck Gone Buck says, what's one of your books I can read that will grow my vocabulary and self-development? Well, my books aren't really vocabulary books. They're written in simple enough language that anyone can understand them. But I would suggest you get my book, The Third Day. That's this red book you see right here behind me. The Decision that Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. This is my most popular book right now, The Third Day. So I would start with that one. And Duck Going Buck, I would suggest you read a bunch of books. You want to up your vocabulary, read a bunch of different books by different people, because if you read a bunch of my books, you'll get a ton of value. The thing is, I have a certain style of language and a certain way that I speak. So my style is going to be consistent. But if you read my book, then you read this guy's book and her book and his book and their book, you're going to pick up on different styles of communication. So if your aim is to grow your vocabulary, you shouldn't just read one person. You should read a bunch of different people, because different people use the language in different ways. Now, if you want to get some game when it comes to your personal and professional development, you should read all my books. I'll sell you all 40 of them. Package deal. Taylor said, I'll see you soon. You're going to be somewhere that I'm going to be. We will talk, young man. Okay, well, maybe we will. If we do, then you can tell me that you watched me on TikTok. But one thing I will tell you, Taylor Green, is do not refer to me as young man. I'm over the age of 40. I don't care how old you are, but don't refer to me as young man. Susie said, masculine man is going to take charge of the situation. Confidence protector. Yes, exactly. Nikki said, what do you think of Stephen Smith being more? Who's Stephen Smith? There's a bunch of people named Stephen Smith. So who are you talking about? So a bunch of you have not read Think and Grow Rich. Okay, Think and Grow Rich is a foundational personal development book. So I would suggest all of you go read it. Here's the good news about Think and Grow Rich. You only have to pay for it. You can find a book for free online and download a PDF or something. Or if you don't want to be cheap, you can just go buy the book for like $15. How much does a book cost? $15. Taylor said, I'm going to have my friend listen to you talk about black on black crime, white on white crime too. Tomorrow's topic will be tentatively black on black crime, unless something happens in the news that bumps it off of the headlines. And if some big thing happens in the news today, then I'm going to push the black on black crime conversation back to next week. But if nothing big happens, or at least nothing in my view is big enough to bump it, then I'll talk about it tomorrow. So Tentative topic tomorrow is black on black crime, but it may change. Everything is subject to change. Christine said, more masculine, less emotional, more logic, or at least outwardly. Protective, confronts issues. Yes, that's what I expect of a man, period. Dr. J said, another great book by Napoleon Hill is Outwitting the Devil. Yes, another great book by Napoleon. So once I read his first book, then I went and got all the rest of his books. Outwitting the Devil is a great book. Taylor says, no such thing as alpha male trying to make up something to sound tough. Generally, I don't even like the concept of alpha male, Taylor. Generally, I do agree with that, but enough people agree with the concept of alpha male, just the phrase, that I will still use it because it gives everybody a frame of what exactly are we talking about. So there's a reason why we put phrases on things, because it lets everybody else follow the conversation. So I generally actually agree with what you're saying, but I still use the term because I know most people don't think that way. Stacy said, my husband is a law enforcement officer, alpha male, and I love it. It allows me to stay in my femininity. Yes. I appreciate when a woman knows that she is feminine and she wants to be feminine. Therefore, she is looking for a man to be masculine. That's when you get the right polarities, and those relationships, those tend to have more chance of succeeding than others. Doesn't mean that just because a woman is feminine, a man is masculine, it's always going to work. But they have a better chance than when both people do not understand their roles. If everyone understands their role, you got a better chance of success than if you don't. Nikki said, I worked 14 years in city government. I can't wait to go back to work. All right, that's good. I think a lot of women who stop working to raise kids want to go back to work because the work gives you something to do, a sense of purpose. And when you're a stay-at-home mom, in my experience, talking to stay-at-home moms, they're in the house all damn day. Who wants to be in the house all day? I think people just want to get out and do something. You may appreciate taking care of your kids, but you also want to live some life, so to speak, outside of just the kids. Carlos said, exactly. Finally, some appreciation for the stay-at-home mom. Yeah, stay-at-home mom is a big job and it's a lot of work. And Tashia said, no sick leave. Exactly. There's no sick leave when you're a stay-at-home mom. Where are you going to go? You ain't got nowhere to go. You can't go in the bedroom. The kid's going to follow you. Freedom said, if you're married to a stay-at-home mom, be sure you have an ironclad prenup. Well, okay. We'll just leave it at that. Tivi said, I make way more money and I don't cop an attitude, not in my nature. Yeah. And it depends on the relationship and the people. It was what I was saying. I heard Megan Kelly, who I listened to. She was talking about how she's in a relationship where she makes a lot more money than her husband. She was saying this on air and she got millions of listeners. And I'm assuming that relationship works because the man is okay knowing that the woman makes more money than him. And she was probably making more money than him when they met. So it's not like she all of a sudden started making all this money. She was already making more than him when they met. And she was cool with it and he was cool with it. And that works. Now, some men would not be cool with that, but some men are cool with it. So that works for them. And they got kids together and everything. And they seem like to have a happy marriage, at least what we see online, but you never know. So Eminem says there is no such thing as a mom going to work, then coming home and take care of the kids and husband. What do you mean by that? There's no such thing. Oh, Frank's World said ESPN Stephen Smith. Oh, he calls himself Stephen A. Smith, so he doesn't get confused with other people. And he spells it, that's Stephen with a PH. So if you would have said Stephen with a PH and put the letter A in between, then I wouldn't know who you're talking about. But he doesn't, that's not how he spells his name. So more of my thoughts on him. What about him? What about Stephen A. Smith? Let's see. Susie said men do buy flowers or open doors, or they do or they don't. Men do that. Men do buy flowers and open doors. Not all men. Is it less common? Absolutely. Now I buy flowers and I absolutely open doors. I open doors for a man. If I'm not open door like I'm dating him, but if I'm walking into the department store and there's a man coming behind me, I will hold the door so he can get in. That's just common manners. But for a woman, absolutely. Actually, I think what you're talking about, Susie, is like opening the car door. So that one, you're right about that. Generally, you're right that men do not go and buy flowers for a woman as much as they used to. I think men still do it. I mean, you go to the grocery store, there's a big section of selling flowers. Somebody's buying those flowers. As far as opening car doors, I will notice this. When I see a man and a woman walk into a car, I will watch them to see if the man will open the woman's door and then she gets in, then he closes the door behind her. I will notice I will notice many times a man will not open the door for the woman. He just doesn't open the door. And yeah, back in the days, that was a very, very common thing. You absolutely open the door for a woman. You get out and you open the door for her. She gets in, you close the door, then you go back and get in the car. Absolutely, that's the thing. And at the same time, while we're talking about it, is also a thing. If you saw, what was that movie? Was it Bronx Tale? I can't remember. I think it was Bronx Tale. Yeah, I think it was Bronx Tale. That if you open the door for a woman and you let her get in the car and then you close the door behind her, you walk around the back of the car, she should reach over and unlock your door for you if you have that kind of car. Now, these days, a lot of times the car is as soon as you open one door, all the doors unlock. So she doesn't have to do that anymore. But back in the days when you had the manual locks, that if you open a door for her and let her in, she's supposed to reach over and unlock your door for you to make it easier for you to get in the car. And if she didn't do that, then that means, like, remember what Sonny said to, what was that guy's name? Carajero in the Bronx Tale. She doesn't open the door for you. She doesn't unlock your door after you open the door for her. She's a selfish broad. Leave her alone. And that was a good litmus test. So we got to say that too. But these days it's kind of irrelevant because the door is already unlocked. We got the 50K. Thank you, Carla, for pushing everybody to the 50K. Everybody say thanks to Carla. She's one of my moderators over here who's been supporting for a long time. She helped us get the 50K likes here today. Stephen A. Smith, the Sports Center. Yeah, Stephen with a PH is how you spell his name. You do PTO and football parent stuff as a job to me. Yeah, it gives you something to do. And I think every human being does not just want to be cooped up in the house, no matter how much you love the other humans who are in the house with you. At some point, you want to get out the damn house and not have to deal with kids. Again, even as a man, I can understand that perspective. Who the hell wants to be in the house all day for what, 12 years? How long would you keep your kids in the house? Classy E said, I did it for 22 years. That's a long time. I loved every piece of it. Yet still craved a long time. Yes, the woman needs time the same way a man needs time. If I come in the house from, let's say I'm working or I was doing some business or something, I need like 5 minutes of nobody talking to me. I just need to just breathe for 5 minutes and nobody bothering me. Not a kid, not a wife. I want anybody talking to me for like 5 minutes. After that 5 minutes, then I'm good. But I need that 5 minutes. So a woman who's with the kids all day and you're a man working, let's say you come home, she's like, yo, you need to watch these kids for 15 minutes because I need to just go in the bedroom and go in the closet and close the door and not be bothered for 15 minutes. I need you to do that, and you just do it. So I completely understand that. Faith said it's a very real thing. I know it's a very real thing. And I'm not even a woman. I understand. Noble said I do both open doors and flowers. Yes, that's what men should do. But a lot of this male, what do we call this? What's the word that we use for this? This chivalry is not as common. It's still a thing. It's just not as common. That's what I think. Stephen A. opened his eyes and talking against, who you talking about, the blue, the Democrats? Generally, he is. I think Stephen A. is saying whatever is popular because he was riding hard for the Democrats and had Kamala won that election, he would be saying the same thing against the Republicans. So I think Stephen A. is an opportunist. Doesn't make him a bad guy. I just think he's an opportunist. Eminem said, sorry, I meant, is there a such thing? I forgot what your question was, Eminem. No, Noble said, I don't open the car door. You do or you don't open the car door? Yeah, Bronx Tale. Yes. So, all right. Teresa said, my husband opens doors at restaurants, and if we are walking home, he will move me to safety. Yes, move me for safety. That's what he's supposed to do. A man should always walk on curbside when he's walking with either a child or a woman. You should always walk on the side of the curb, wherever the cars could possibly come from. My dad used to do that with me. When he was walking, he would say, let me walk on this side. And I asked him why, and he explained it. If a car comes, it should hit me first before it hits you. And you should open doors for women, car doors, and just doors, period. I open the door for a woman who I don't even know. That's just common. This is common courtesy. Even if I'm walking in and a woman was walking in before me, she should open the door for me. That's just manners. This is having manners. A lot of people just don't have manners these days. I was in the post office last week, and I was standing in line. I usually don't stand in line, but I had to stand in line because I was trying to do some paperwork stuff. And this older guy, he was probably like 70. He shuffled past me. I was standing next to a counter. He shuffled past me, and my son was standing next to me. My son is little, like not even 3 feet tall. He shuffled past me. He wasn't close enough to me that I needed to move. My son moved so this guy could get by. The way he shuffled by, and he didn't even say anything. He didn't even acknowledge us. And I said to him, excuse me, sir, don't you see my son standing here? You could at least say, excuse me. And he said, and he looked at me and said, excuse me. And he just walked away, and it was over. But it was just common courtesy. A lot of people just don't have common courtesy these days. And at the same time, a lot of men don't know how to have that type of exchange without being like toxic. I didn't do it. I didn't approach him in a toxic way. I didn't even approach him. I just said something to him. I said, excuse me, sir. You see my son saying that you could at least say, excuse me. I said it in a polite way, but I was saying it in a way that he understood I was calling him out. And he said, excuse me. And everybody moved on. And men should be able to do that. And he was at least respectful enough to, when I said something, he said, excuse me, and it was all good. Now, what if he had turned around and said, fuck you, I do what I want? Now, that would have been a different situation. And what if I had come at him in a too aggressive way? He might have responded in a different way. So both men had to be able to have this exchange without things getting out of hand. And a respectful man knows how to do that. When you're in your masculine, it doesn't mean that you have to be tough. It just means you have to be firm and you got to hold your position, and other people will respect it. Even being alpha. Alpha doesn't mean you have to be tough or you're bullying people. It just means you're holding your ground, and you tend to be in that position. You tend to be in that mindset all the time. It's not something you vacillate in and out of. It's just your natural state. And it doesn't make you a bad guy. Noble said, gentlemen open doors. That's very true. Correct. Carla said, you're welcome, but no need to thank me. Well, I told him to thank you, Carla. We had to thank you because you help entice and encourage everybody to like. So I appreciate you. Nikki said, manners and common sense go a long way. 100%. Carla said, some people just don't like being corrected. That's very true. But I was willing to deal with it if he wasn't willing to be corrected, but he needed to be, because he needed to say, excuse me, because it's just not mannerly to just brush past somebody without acknowledging what you just did. So however he responded, I was prepared to respond to his response. And luckily he was respectful. I was respectful, and everybody moved on and nothing else happened. And it was all good. And when you're around people who are generally respectful, generally you get respectful engagements. Now, when you're around people who don't know how to act, then you get craziness. So that's why I like to hang in places where people generally know how to act, so that I don't have to pretend as if I don't know how to act, because I'm willing to act like that, but I don't want to act like that, because, again, lawyers cost money. So manners and common sense go a long way. Yes. Eminem said, my husband is amazing. 45 years. He still brings flowers and open doors. We met when we were 11. Wow. All right. Congratulations to you and your husband. That's great. Okay. So we answered all the questions, folks. We got the 50,000 likes. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Carla, for moderating. We got a couple comments over on YouTube. Let me see what we got. O-Dog says, no, Snuggles says, wait a minute. We got a couple comments on YouTube. Let me answer these. O-Dog says, women don't know what they want. You have to show them and tell them what they want. LOL. Well, there are some women who fall into that description. Not all of them, O-Dog. He put an LOL, so I know he's kind of being tongue-in-cheek. Mad Villainy said, I heard XX yesterday says she's a villain on the channel. She's definitely a masculine type. Yeah, well, yeah, some women are masculine. Some men like that. You ever heard of BDSM? Some men like masculine women so that they can be the feminine person in the relationship. And that's to each their own. That's what I say. If everybody is consenting, then it's all good. Snuggle said, it'll be interesting if you have the conversation about dating with other young men who are actually dating. I would like to see what they would tell you about the landscape. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I agree, would be interesting. O-Dog said that bitch acronym was hilarious. I wouldn't equate being in control to any bitch I know. Yeah, I never heard that bitch acronym. What is it? What'd she say? Baby in, what'd she say? I can't remember what she said. What was that acronym about? What was it? It was BITCH, baby, I'm taking control, honey, something like that. I can't remember what she said. Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. That's his name, Stephen Bartlett. Yeah. It was a good interview that he did. I don't watch all his stuff, but that was a good interview. Matt Villainy said most of his guests are interesting. I would think so. Matt Villainy, would you say LeBron pulling strings to get his son in the NBA is an ego thing? Yes, it was an ego thing. He did it for himself. He didn't do it for his son, because if he was doing it for his son, he would let his son stay in college. Why does his son need to be in the NBA? I mean, just a simple question. Why does LeBron's son need to be in the NBA right now? If he's going to become good enough, he can just stay in college, get good, and he will earn his way into the NBA. It's not like he needs the money. Is LeBron's son in the NBA for the money? He don't need the money. LeBron got the money. So why is he in the NBA? Only reason LeBron's son is in the NBA is because LeBron wanted to be able to say, I got my son in the NBA and we played on the NBA team at the same time together, and nobody's ever done that before. That was 100% LeBron doing things for himself, and he's using his son to do things for himself. Now, if his son actually ends up being good enough to sustain an NBA career, that does not change the reality that the only reason his son got into the draft is because LeBron said, if you want me on your team, you got to pick my son. LeBron said that out of his own mouth. So we can't say that didn't happen. That happened. And again, I'm going to do a whole live on this next week. Matt Villainy said, not all excesses deserve chivalry. Then again, why are you with her beyond Nookie if she doesn't deserve it? Talking about in a relationship. Yeah, being in total control, honey. Is that what it was? Yeah, I never heard anybody say that, so it was funny. Being in total control, honey. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Shout out to the women who abide by that. So a freed mindset, feeling disrespected is an emotional reaction to a situation. Technically, you're correct. It's an emotion, period. Because a reaction means it depends on what you do, if you're reacting or responding. So let's just say I'm at the post office. This guy shuffles by me and I say, excuse me, sir. You could at least say, excuse me. He turns around and says something crazy. Now, I could feel disrespected based on what he says, but it still depends on what I actually do. Now, if I smack him in his face, is that an emotional reaction? Yes. But it's a chosen emotional reaction. It actually would be a response. If I smack him in the face, I'm not reacting, I'm responding. I'm doing it on purpose. I probably wouldn't do that. Depends on what he says, I'm going to say something. And I'm willing to escalate it, but I hope it does not escalate. But it depends. Reaction is more about if you're not thinking at all. If you respond, that means you thought about it. So the difference between reaction and response is a thought in between. So Duck Going Buck said, Bronny is doing better in the G League than plenty of picks before and after him. That's irrelevant. That's the whole point. That's what a lot of people are saying. He's doing well in the G League. That's cool. Number one, who gives a damn about what somebody does in the G League? Nobody. Number two, the fact that he got drafted to the NBA. He got drafted so that LeBron could play on the same team as his son on the Lakers. LeBron ain't in the G League. He's on the Lakers. And when LeBron's son plays on the Lakers, he is terrible because he is not equipped to play in the NBA yet. And if all he was going to do was play in the G League, he could have stayed in college, developed in college, and then gone to the NBA or the G League on his own accord based on his own performance, not based on what his dad did. The only reason LeBron's son is in the NBA now is because LeBron wanted him and his son to be on the team together. There is no need for his son to come to the NBA now because he's clearly not an NBA player. The stats have proven that he's not an NBA player. He's a G League player. Being in the G League is not the same as being in the NBA. That's the reason why there is a G League and there is an NBA. It's the reason why LeBron's son is doing all of his good work in the G League because he ain't ready to play in the NBA, which was the whole point of I want my son on the team with me. And again, this was all for LeBron. Again, regardless of what Bronny does, Bronny can become a Hall of Famer in the NBA 20 years from now. That does not change the fact that the reason he's in the NBA now is because of his father. His father wanted to do that for himself. That was not for his son. His son could have made it to the NBA on his own without his dad's help had he just stayed in college and earned his way in. He did not earn his way in. And there's no counterpoint to that. Nobody can act like that didn't happen. Carlos said, I didn't even know there was a G League. Exactly. Nobody gives a damn about the G League. Who's the leading scorer in the G League? Nobody knows and nobody cares. Nobody cares about the G League. How all of a sudden doing something in the G League matters. That the G League matters for the players in the G League. Nobody else even knows that the G League exists. Name 5 teams in the G League. All right, nobody can do it. So Duck Going Buck said, so everybody who's doing better, he's doing better than should not be in the NBA or G League. Straw man question. Ask me a better substantial question. That's a straw man. Straw man don't work over here. And by the way, I'm going to do a whole live on this next week. But since somebody threw that in there, I decided to answer it. But we're about to wrap this live up. Chippy said, Bronny carrying the G League. Okay, if you claim that he's doing that, again, I don't believe that to be true. But if you believe it, Chippy X, who cares? Who cares about carrying the G League? It's the minor leagues. It's like being the best player in minor league baseball. What are you actually proving? It's like being the tallest midget. What are you proving? The G League is there for people who are good enough to be pro, but not quite good enough to be in the NBA. That's the very point of the G League. So if you dominate the G League, who cares? Again, you're dominating a league that nobody even cares about. An average casual sports fan does not even know that the G League exists, let alone do they care. That's the G League. So shout out to Bronny for doing his thing in the G League. All right. So now it has been said. I'm on the record. But next week, I'm going to do a whole live about the G League. So that's the whole thing. Yeah, Bronny is not good in the NBA. All right. Look at his NBA stats. If you want to look at Bronny, don't look at the G League because, again, nobody cares. What are you accomplishing? The guy who's won the dunk contest 3 years in a row has been playing his whole career in the G League. Does anybody care about this guy other than the dunk contest? No. Nobody even knows his name other than when he does the dunk contest. Who's he play for? Oh, he's in the G League. Oh, okay. That's the whole thing. So Ed said, outside of Bronny, you can't name 5 other rookies in his class. This whole draft weak as hell. Irrelevant, Ed. That's irrelevant. Who cares? That's the whole point. If you're not performing in the NBA, nobody cares what you're doing. That's the whole point. So we know Bronny's name because of his last name. Well, yeah, because of his dad. We know everybody knows this. Again, the fans and defenders of LeBron are trying to come up with these other reasons why it's okay. It can be okay, but did LeBron do this for himself or did he do it for himself or not? The answer is he did it for himself. No matter which way you want to frame it, he did it for himself. Regardless of what his son actually does, he did it for himself based on the frame I already gave you. But again, let me not give away all my material, folks. All right, next week, I'm going to do a whole live on this subject because I see, actually, I already know. A lot of people have opinions on this, which is fine. You do not need to agree with my opinion. I'm giving you a preview of my position, but my entire angle is going to be a little bit different than what we're talking about here. But I will get to that next week. Today is only Wednesday, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. As a matter of fact, I forgot. Today is Wednesday. I was thinking it's Thursday. So right now, tentatively, everybody who's listening, tomorrow we're going to talk about DEI. I forgot we had that topic. So we're going to talk about DEI a little bit tomorrow. have an angle that I haven't gone into yet. Then on Friday, maybe tomorrow, I'll do the black on black. What should I do tomorrow? Y'all give me the answer. What should I do next? Should we do black on black or DEI? Which one should I do tomorrow? Just put it in the comments. Black on black or DEI? What should be the topic tomorrow? And again, whatever topic is voted for is going to be tentative because it depends on, this is all pending nothing else crazy happening in the news. If something crazy happens in the news today, there's something blows up in Washington, D.C., then that might be the topic tomorrow. But the next topic, should it be DEI or black on black? Which one should we do next? Okay, so everybody's saying DEI is getting the higher votes. Okay, so what I just got is my live was flagged for hate speech and hateful behaviors. Repeated violations could result in your live being discontinued. What did I just say? That's TikTok just told me that. So anyway, let me not even say anything else. So tomorrow, so Katie said, I'm 44, raised by 2 women, conservative Christian, masculinity ran high in the house. Interesting. It was a struggle, but I made it and loved the life I was given. Great for you. All right, so tomorrow we're going to do, I don't know. I don't think it was DEI. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. Hopefully that's not what I said that TikTok didn't like. But anyway, that's what we'll do tomorrow. That is coming up tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, by the way. Them typing that word thing. What word thing? What was it? What got said? I don't know what got said that TikTok gave me a warning. What did I say that TikTok warned me for? I don't know what it was. It was people typing that. But why would I get a warning? I don't know. Carl. I don't know where this came from. But anyway, I got through this whole live and didn't get any warnings. Then all of a sudden that comes out of nowhere. So anyway, and before I get myself suspended from TikTok again, we're going to wrap this live up. I'll be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. The topic tentatively is going to be diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right, that's going to be the topic here tomorrow. I will see you all at 8 a.m. Eastern. Make sure that you follow me on YouTube. My YouTube channel is where the replay to this will be. We were smooth on YouTube today, so shout out to YouTube for working. Make sure you follow my Instagram. My Instagram link is also in my bio on TikTok. And I'm on every other social media platform. I'm on X. X is at Dre all day. Who's my GOAT in the NBA? Best player of all time? I'd probably go with Jordan. Jordan, I would go with number 1. LeBron's up there, but I would go Jordan number 1. But the LeBron conversation is for next week. So we still got 2 more days this week. We're going to talk about current events, and I piss people off and might get myself suspended again and have to appeal again. So that's where we are for now. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Work on your game. We are out of here.